The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242
or visit tomsbeets.com.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Free Speech TV fund drive today, fundraising drive today. And Free Speech TV needs your help. Please call 877-378-8669 and help us keep this network going. Keep it rolling along. With a $60 contribution, there is the Free Speech TV, or the ACLU rather, Pocket Constitution. This comes not with just the Constitution, but also a little commentary about the Constitution and, you know, what to do if you're arrested or taken to a police station. What if the police come to your home? If you're stopped for questioning, if you're stopped in your car. Lots of interesting stuff in here in this little pocket Constitution. Also, the ACLU has published Know Your Rights cards, to know your rights at demonstrations and protests, and know your rights if you're gay and going to college. So got the book and the cards. So that's the $60 gift, or $5 a month for a year. With a $120 gift, you get a copy of Howard Zinn's book, A People's History of the United States. With a $240 gift, you get a copy of my book, What Would Jefferson Do? And a Pocket Constitution, and the 2 Know Your Rights cards, and a Free Speech TV sticker. And with a $360 gift, or $30 a month for a year, you get the People's History of the U.S., the Voices of the People's History, the Pocket Constitution, the Free Speech TV sticker. And with a $1,000 contribution, come to Washington, D.C., and we'll have lunch. And there's a pizza place down at the end of the street. There's a Thai restaurant around the corner. There's an Ethiopian restaurant downstairs. There's all kinds of great food around here. And although if we get, you know, a couple people together, sometimes we'll have 2 or 3 or 4. Actually, I think only once if we ever had 4. But you know, Free Speech TV, $1,000 donors, and you know, we just typically then, you know, if everybody's up for it, we'll go to pizza or Thai or something, whatever. Anyhow, so we call it the pizza party. Also, Steve is holding his $10,000 matching pledge throughout this week. So your donations up to $10,000 will be doubled. So yesterday, you know, we're trying to hit. I'm trying to hit $10,000 a day. We have not done it yet, and we had, I think, about a $4,000 a day yesterday, which is down. Last Friday was around 6. So, you know, we're not hitting our goals, and we need you to step up if you possibly can. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. Free Speech TV is an extraordinary and unique thing, and it, you know, needs your support, needs your help. It's you know, at a certain level, it's almost like, you know, what am I willing to pay for real news? What am I willing to pay for unfiltered? What am I willing to pay to get the straight scoop? And, you know, or what's it worth in terms of, you know, my time and effort and things. If you, for example, if you can't make a contribution, and I know many of you are living on fixed incomes, and I, you know, I wouldn't want you to hurt yourself for Free Speech TV. But if you can't make a contribution, you can talk about Free Speech TV on your Facebook page or on Twitter or on Instagram or Snapchat or whatever you happen to use. Or just send an email to your friends and neighbors saying, hey, you know, check out Free Speech TV. You know, tell people where it is on Dish and DirecTV and how they can find it at freespeech.org. Make it a personal mission to every week have at least 2 or 3 or 4 new people introduced to Free Speech TV. We need to grow the viewership base for Free Speech TV, as well as keep the network alive. And so you can contribute with money, which is like really needed right now. But if you can't contribute with money, there's still a lot of things that you can do to help support Free Speech TV. So please seriously think about that, of making a commitment to say, okay, I'm going to help. I can't give to Free Speech TV, but I probably know 3 people who can, and I want to get them familiar with Free Speech TV in the hopes that they'll get hooked and become regular viewers, and then maybe donors. I mean, you don't call somebody up and say, hey, you ought to watch this so you can donate to it. But it's really how it works. I mean, we need, as Free Speech TV needs more viewers, and here's a mechanism, a tool, an opportunity to do it, and that is, you engaging yourself. And also, Free Speech TV needs some help, and needs to pay the bills. And if it's worth a bag of popcorn at the movies to you every month, $10, $15 a month, $20 a month, great. And if it's worth more than that to you, great. If it's however you like to support Free Speech TV, please call now. We have this week slipped behind, and we really need your help. Please call 877-378-8660. Thanks.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you. A grim day here in the nation's capital, but it's Wednesday. It's our first hour, and Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour, and super pleased to have him with us, the co-chair of the House of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and representing the state of Wisconsin, 2nd District of Wisconsin, as I recall. Congressman, welcome back.
Thank you, Tom. Glad to be here.
Thank you. We're learning that the shooter in this case this morning, where Congressman Scalise and 4 others were shot, his name is James T. Hodgkinson. His website is covered with Bernie stuff and progressive stuff. I mean, he which is kind of makes me gulp. Kira Lerner over at Think Progress, one of the reporters, tweeted this morning at 10 a.m. I was scheduled to cover a House GOP-led hearing on deregulating gun silencers. Another day in America. That meeting has been canceled. And Senator Rand Paul tweeted about a year ago today, it was 23 June 2016, why do we have a Second Amendment? It's not to shoot deer. It's to shoot at the government when it becomes tyrannical. I retweeted that this morning with a note saying it's time to rethink this kind of rhetoric, please. Congressman, your thoughts?
Well, and here we are, really just about exactly a year from the Pulse incident in Orlando, Florida, where 49 people were killed. Fortunately, no one was killed today, although several people were injured. And, I think the bottom line is there are troubled people. It doesn't matter where their political leanings or beliefs or religious values or anything else are. If there's someone who's troubled enough to go and take a gun and do this, and we know that that there's still too many people who have access to these weapons that can cause this kind of damage. And again, today we were actually very fortunate. But just a year ago, because we were celebrating this the other day, commemorating, I should say, not celebrating, the Pulse massacre. This is what happens in a country where, maybe it's just a little too available and accessible to get some of these really high-powered weapons. Now, in this particular case, I'm not sure if we know the weapon yet, but from the counts, they said that it was certainly some rapid firing that was happening.
Probably an AR-15.
Yeah.
David Frum, ironically, George W. Bush's former speechwriter, the guy who wrote the Axis of Evil speech, He tweeted this morning, Virginia, no background checks, no licensing, no registration, no permit required for concealed carry of long guns, open carry of long guns and handguns. So.
Yeah. I think the toughest thing for a lot of us is right after Pulse. That was one of the moments that I'm most proud of, where we took over the floor, the House floor, to try to, create more awareness about what is happening and why every time we have a moment of silence, there's no moment of action that follows it. And then, it just continues and continues and continues. Yeah. And, at this point, it's something that, again, we're very fortunate no one was killed in this situation, but, how much more can you create the awareness of what's going on than when it happens, here in the nation's capital, to actually members of Congress who are out playing baseball. I mean, this is part of why we need to have a better, I think, national approach on this issue. But what I'm hoping doesn't happen, although I fear will be politicization of this. And again,
it's already happened. Fox is on it right now. They're showing pictures of him holding signs that say "tax the rich" and Reaganomics and trickle down, and his Facebook page with all the pictures of Bernie and stuff. It's already happening right now.
Yeah, and that's quite honestly totally unacceptable. And hopefully, fair-minded people, regardless of any political affiliation or no affiliation, will look at that and be just as disgusted by what they're doing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this guy also had a previous arrest for assault. And, in a rational country, that might disqualify you from buying guns, although we don't know, where he got the guns from. But anyhow, we're operating in a relative information vacuum right now.
Right.
But just to remind our listeners and viewers, Congressman Pocan will be with us for the hour. You're welcome to call on any topic that you would like to discuss. The number is 202-808-9925. What else is going on in the world today, Congressman, or in your world?
Sure. Well, we actually canceled votes today, but to be perfectly honest, it's not a especially high-powered week, at least in the House side. What's going on as far as votes on the floor? I think, a couple things that made news. One, Democrats in Congress are suing Trump over the emoluments clause. I think over 200 of us now have got involved in a federal lawsuit. And, that's where the president refuses to separate his business interests from himself in the way that every other president, regardless of political party, has done. We have great concerns over this, and we need to have it addressed, because otherwise we don't know why decisions are being made, which is why we keep asking for his taxes. I think that's something in the news, and I think some people have talked about, although quite honestly I think it was the most overrated, underperformed hearing was yesterday with Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, showing he knows how to say that he doesn't know how to answer questions, or he won't answer questions. That's really what we got out of it for the most part. Interestingly, there were a couple areas where I think he did confirm some things that former FBI Director Comey said, but in general, he did a lot of, I think, protecting himself and not answering questions. And I think it turned out to be rather uneventful.
Yeah, it seemed like about once every 2 minutes or so there was an "I don't remember" or "I don't recall," which is the old perjury dodge. It's really hard to get convicted of perjury for saying "I don't remember" as a way of avoiding speaking the truth.
Yeah, although like I said, a couple things.
Might just be he doesn't remember.
When he said that when the president cleared the room, it was just hitting Comey, and then the next day, when Comey expressed that he was concerned about that, and supposedly Sessions said that as well. But a couple things he said kind of contradictory on his own testimony. But by and large, again, I think it was a non-eventful hearing. But again, I didn't expect someone who's as seasoned a politician and partisan of an ideologue to do much different than that. But I think that was part of the news of the week.
Yeah. Agreed. We're talking with Congressman Mark Pocan for the hour. He'll be taking your calls after this short break. He is the U.S. Congressman representing the 2nd District of Wisconsin, newly elected co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. His website, Pocan, POCAN.house.gov. You can tweet him at Rep, R-E-P, Mark, M-A-R-K, Pocan, P-O-C-A-N, at Rep Mark Pocan. We'll be back with your calls for Congressman Pocan.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
202-808-9925, our number. You can be on with Congressman Pocan in just a minute.
And welcome back. Bill, watching Free Speech TV in Linwood, Washington. Bill, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Mr. Hartman and Congressman Pocan. I'm sorry about the state of labor in your state. You're not my representative, obviously, but as a representative, Democrat, I would hope you would not allow this, the question, no answers to go on. It's all you're going to get, obviously, is I don't recall, and whatever privilege they're using to cover up the answers. Are you guys going to pursue this in some ways or any way?
Sure, Bill. Well, thanks for your question. And first of all, let me say, I also come from the labor family. I'm a painter, an allied trade IUPA team member for about 3 decades. And, Wisconsin's had it tough under Scott Walker. They went right to work. They destroyed collective bargaining for public employees. They're now going after prevailing wage for no reason other than, Scott Walker's trying to get national attention. And, it's sad because if you look at, the greatest times we had, I think, economically for the middle class and the least amount of income inequality was when we had unions the strongest. That movement makes sure that people have fair wages and the benefits that they need. And, it's really terrible to see it going counterproductively. I think specifically to your question, Bill, we're pushing things. I mean, what we want to do, and I think the bottom line is if we get an independent commission, a truly independent commission, we can get to the bottom of all of this. But, I think FBI Director Comey gave us a lot of interesting testimony talking about the president, lying. Now the president claims he's willing to go under oath and testify to Senate. We'll see if that happens. But the bottom line is it should be in everyone's best interest to have a truly independent commission. And if the president has nothing to hide, it's in his best interest to have that as well. And that's the direction that we are going to continue to pursue.
We just have 90 seconds or maybe 70 seconds to the break here. About a little over a minute, Congressman, a little too short a time to put somebody on with a question. But what is anything coming up in the House with regard to all this Trump stuff?
Well, the problem on the House is on the Intelligence Committee. It's been made the most partisan, right? The ranking member, Devin Nunes, has had to recuse himself after erratic action. And,
that's right. After he went over to the White House and released information
that he got the night before from the White House. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So he's made it, unfortunately, very, very partisan. So, we're continuing to pursue that. We had another vote trying to, another issue we tried to raise yesterday about trying to get the taxes released. We're pushing it on the emoluments clause. I mean, we're not giving up at any level. It's just a lot of these high-profile hearings right now have been in the Senate, and that's where a lot of the action's been the last couple of weeks on this.
Do I understand, as Democrats in the minority, you do not have the power of subpoena?
No, and a lot of the Senate, again, just because I think that their rules has had a chance to do things differently. They have confirmations that allow them to do things a little differently. We just don't quite have the same latitude they do in trying to expose some of this right now. But we've been pushing, matters on the floor, trying to get votes, and we're definitely not giving up on this.
Yeah. Are you, by the way, one of the ones who plays baseball on this team?
No, I think if you put me on the baseball team, you would ensure a loss.
Okay.
So
me too.
I don't do that to my colleagues.
Me too. Okay, Congressman Mark Pocan is with us. We'll be picking up the rest, more of your calls right after the break here. Stick around. It's coming up on about 18 minutes. Hey, Thom Hartmann.
Hi, I'm Heather with Free Speech TV. Your support, whether through giving of donations, volunteering, or even spreading the word, has made it possible for the only independent progressive news network to sustain for more than 20 years. Now, you can give to Free Speech TV through the Branch of Gratitude. This program is a sustainable way to give that reduces waste through paper mailing, postage, and staff hours. By choosing to participate in the Branch of Gratitude, you are joining hands with the socially conscious community and sending a message to the world that Free Speech TV is not only here to stay, it is here to thrive. Please call 877-378-8669 or go online to freespeech.org. Make a difference and join the Branch of Gratitude today.
Welcome back. We're talking with Congressman Mark Pocan, taking your calls for the hour. And Chris in Crown Point, Indiana. Hey, Chris, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Congressman. I just wanted to mention earlier you two were talking about how thankfully today no one was killed in this incident, but there was there was a fatality. The gunman was killed, and even though he was the perpetrator of this crime, I mean, I think that it's sad that here's one person that obviously has some mental health issues. I think that's safe to say, and maybe if he had gotten some help instead, we wouldn't have any casualties today, and he wouldn't have lost his life either. So I wanted to point that out. I understand he's the perpetrator, so maybe he's not in the forefront of who we have sympathies for, but I did want to point that out.
Hey, Chris, good point. In fact, I think we just found out really in the last probably half hour that he had died because at first that information isn't out there. We still don't know the gun used. I mean, a lot of this is still breaking, but I do think your point is very valid. I mean, in many cases, as we look at this, it's not a lot of what people believe in that makes someone to do this. Often, it's well, I shouldn't say that. In some cases, it is. In some cases, it's we've obviously for someone to do this, we assume that there's a mental health issue involved, and part of why I think many of us would like to see mental health treated like an illness. Our prisons are full of people. Often 25+% of people are there with mental health issues. And if you had 25% of the prison population with cancer, people would be up in arms. And yet when you have mental health, we don't think twice about it because, unfortunately, people don't think twice about inmates all too often in our state legislatures. So your point is well taken, and I appreciate your comment.
Joseph in Altamont, New York. Joseph, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Congressman. Hi, Tom. My question is pretty simple. I seem to think this attack will be used to stop town halls throughout America by corrupt politicians. And the whole purpose of town halls is to put them in check, to make sure we know what they're doing, to make sure they understand we know what they're doing. But this doesn't seem to be – I mean, this is going to be a way to create so much security around everyone, no one's going to be able to question them anymore. What do you think?
Yeah, Joseph, I mean, my attitude on something like this is all the more reason we have town halls and show that, you're not going to let something like this disrupt the democratic process and disrupt democracy. So all the more important we continue to engage with our constituents because, if you think about it, there was the Gabby Gifford case, but that's been quite a while ago. And, in general, we have some level of law enforcement at these town halls anyway, so we have some protections in place. I did one in actually Janesville area in Rock County at the Tech College where right after they had someone who had threatened to do some shootings and they were still looking for the person at the time, we had extra security. But if you don't show up, somehow you're letting people like that win. So I think it's all the more reason for us to make sure that democracy still functions like democracy, and that means you have town halls and talk to your constituents, and this doesn't become something that stops us from doing, I think, our duties.
Rich in Sedro-Woolley, Washington. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good morning, Congressman. When you're selling single payer to the masses, to the voters, don't you think it's a better idea to refer to it as insurance? Because you're going up against big corporate insurance, and now you're comparing apples to apples. When you say health care, that means a lot of things to a lot of people, whereas when you say insurance, it's that piece of paper in your hand at the kitchen table. And also promote the mobility, economic mobility it provides for moving job to job without having to pay thousands in COBRA, practical aspects.
Yeah, Rich, I think, there's a number of things, that when we present a Medicare for All or a single-payer system that we can use to talk about, and I think you brought some of them up. I usually don't get too much into the semantics of, how exactly we're saying the insurance or companies or healthcare or things. I just think if you talk about the practical application to a family who's, trying to make sure they can pay their mortgage and send their kids to college and have health care for their family, are we addressing it at that level? And you can explain that. Like, yeah, if you have a different job, if it's, something you still are covered regardless, or if you would lose your job or you decide to start a small business, this gives you an opportunity to. There's a lot of things we can point to about why it makes sense. And I think, just approaching it at that level. I think the most important thing is, again, we talk about it in the most common, understandable terms possible, because most people are just very busy dealing with their daily life, and we've got to let them know how it affects them. And I think, quite honestly, on all economic issues, we need to do a much better job of that.
David in Woodland Hills, California. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Thank you, the both of you. We need to stop saying Hillary Clinton lost. Liberals need to pound away on the real reason we lost, which is interstate cross-check and Republican voter suppression laws, or this is going to be the future of all of our elections. And let me give you a brief parable. If a guy robs a bank, you will never hear the president of the bank saying, oh, well, we lost some money. What are you going to do? Maybe our security was bad. We'll try to do better next time. No. What he says is, we were robbed. Call the police, catch the thief, and bring me back my money. And while you're at it, bring us back our Supreme Court nominee.
David, thanks for your comments. I mostly agree with what you're saying. I think that you're right. We don't point out that Hillary Clinton actually won the popular vote by 3 million votes, and that in places like Wisconsin, we have reports now that are showing how the vote was suppressed in a lot of states where it was suppressed, and we know the story of interstate cross-check and a lot of states where people were just dropped completely off the rolls. The only thing is, I think if we only focus on that, we ignore there were problems with that campaign. And when 200,000 people, fewer Democrats, turned out in Wisconsin and we lost the state by 22,000, that wasn't all due to people not being able to vote, because in my home county of Kenosha down in the southeast corner, 9,000 fewer people voted for Hillary Clinton than Barack Obama, and that wasn't due to voter suppression. That was due to a lack of an economic message that resonated with the families there of people who used to make cars and now don't have anything close to that for good-paying jobs. So I agree that that is a major issue of what happened, and we need to bring that up, but I don't want to lose focus that unless we get back to core economic issues and populist, progressive economic issues, we're still going to potentially have failure for other reasons.
Yeah, and this is a discussion that the Democratic Party is having vigorously right now, is it not, Congressman?
Absolutely, and I think I'm so glad that my friend Keith Ellison is where he's at, and quite honestly, Tom Perez was probably one of the most progressive cabinet secretaries under Barack Obama. Having this economic conversation, I think, is just key and central from where progressives come at, where the future of the party goes.
Congressman Mark Pocan with us, taking your calls for the hour. We'll be right back with more of your calls for the Congressman.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Coming up on 28 minutes past the hour, we'll be back in just a few minutes with Congressman Pocan taking your calls. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Free Speech TV fund drive today, fundraising drive today. And Free Speech TV needs your help. Please call 877-378-8669 and help us keep this network going. Keep it rolling along. With a $60 contribution, there is the Free Speech TV, or the ACLU rather, Pocket Constitution. This comes not with just the Constitution, but also a little commentary about the Constitution and, what to do if you're arrested or taken to a police station. What if the police come to your home? If you're stopped for questioning, if you're stopped in your car. Lots of interesting stuff in here in this little pocket Constitution. Also, the ACLU has published Know Your Rights cards, to know your rights at demonstrations and protests, and know your rights if you're gay and going to college. So got the book and the cards. So that's the $60 gift, or $5 a month for a year. With a $120 gift, you get a copy of Howard Zinn's book, A People's History of the United States. With a $240 gift, you get a copy of my book, What Would Jefferson Do? And a Pocket Constitution, and the 2 Know Your Rights cards.
and a Free Speech TV sticker. And with a $360 gift or $30 a month for a year, you get the People's History of the U.S., the Voices of the People's History, the Pocket Constitution, the Free Speech TV sticker. And with a $1,000 contribution, come to Washington, D.C., and we'll have lunch. And there's a pizza place down at the end of the street. There's a Thai restaurant around the corner. There's an Ethiopian restaurant downstairs. There's all kinds of great food around here. And although if we get, a couple people together, sometimes we'll have 2 or 3 or 4. Actually, I think only once if we ever had 4. But Free Speech TV, $1,000 donors, and we just typically then, if everybody's up for it, we'll go to pizza or Thai or something, whatever. Anyhow, so we call it the pizza party. Also, Steve is holding his $10,000 matching pledge throughout this week. So your donations up to $10,000 will be doubled. So yesterday, we're trying to hit. I'm trying to hit $10,000 a day. We have not done it yet, and we had, I think, about a $4,000 day yesterday, which is down. Last Friday was around 6. So, we're not hitting our goals, and we need you to step up if you possibly can. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. Free Speech TV is an extraordinary and unique thing, and needs your support, needs your help. It's at a certain level, it's almost like, what am I willing to pay for real news? What am I willing to pay for unfiltered? What am I willing to pay to get the straight scoop? And or what's it worth in terms of my time and effort and things. If you, for example, if you can't make a contribution, and I know many of you are living on fixed incomes, and I wouldn't want you to hurt yourself for Free Speech TV. But if you can't make a contribution, you can talk about Free Speech TV on your Facebook page or on Twitter or on Instagram or Snapchat or whatever you happen to use. Or just send an email to your friends and neighbors saying, hey, check out Free Speech TV. Tell people where it is on Dish and DirecTV and how they can find it at freespeech.org. Make it a personal mission to every week have at least 2 or 3 or 4 new people introduced to Free Speech TV. We need to grow the viewership base for Free Speech TV as well as keep the network alive. And so you can contribute with money, which is like really needed right now. But if you can't contribute with money, there's still a lot of things that you can do to help support Free Speech TV. So please seriously think about that, of making a commitment to say, okay, I'm going to help. I can't give to Free Speech TV, but I probably know 3 people who can, and I want to get them familiar with Free Speech TV in the hopes that they'll get hooked and become regular viewers. And then maybe donors. I mean, you don't call somebody up and say, hey, you ought to watch this so you can donate to it. But it's really how it works. I mean, we need, as Free Speech TV needs more viewers, and here's a mechanism, a tool, an opportunity to do it, and that is, you engaging yourself. And also, Free Speech TV needs some help, and needs to pay the bills. And if it's worth a bag of popcorn at the movies to you every month, $10, $15 a month, $20 a month, great. And if it's worth more than that to you, great. If it's however you like to support Free Speech TV, please call now. We have this week slipped behind, and we really need your help. Please call 877-378-8660. Thanks.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Welcome back. It's Congressman Mark Pocan with us for the hour, and midday with Mark, I guess.
Congressman Pocan?
That works. I'll take it.
Okay. Let's see here. George in Santee, California. Hey, George, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Congressman. Good day to you.
Hi, George.
My comment is about a couple months back when they were first talking about the Republican health care bill to replace Obamacare. After the debate, I don't remember which congressman it was, but it was a Democrat that made the remark that the Republicans don't seem to even care about poor people. Or rather, she said, the Republicans don't even pretend to care about poor people. And, my mind kind of wanders sometimes, and I thought, yeah, like the Democrats do pretend to care about poor people. And I think that's maybe one of the problems with the Democrats, that they talk about care about poor people, but they don't really do anything. And I'm a Democrat, and I'm a little disappointed in that.
Yeah, George, I guess let me offer this perspective. I often am the biggest critic sometimes of people in my own party. I want them to do more because that's what I think are the principles of our party. But when I look at the history of where we're at, I just have been reading. Rosa DeLauro has a new book out called The Least Among Us. It's a great read. I'm about 2/3 of the way through it. And when she talks about the fights they had for the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit and all these other issues along the way, and fighting for food to make sure that we've got food security for people through the SNAP program. I mean, we have led where you don't see the Republicans leading when it comes to poverty, and the fact that a lot of the poverty proposals right now under the Republicans are block-granting proposals, which actually have less funds and really don't address poverty. I still think the Democratic Party has those issues. It's just right now, let's face it, there's a Republican House, a Republican Senate, Republican President. We're not able to put some of those forth because they're in charge. Elections have consequences. But I think it's unfair to say that the Democrats don't look out for people who are poor, because, again, I look at Barbara Lee and I look at Jan Chicago. I look at all these people who every single day are fighting for, as Rosa's book says, the least among us. I just don't think that's fair. Now, can we do better? Absolutely. We try to. The Progressive Caucus, I think, takes the leadership on that. But I want to be fair, especially after just reading, that first part of her book. There is a rich history of the Democratic Party looking out for those in poverty. We need to do more, but I don't want to make a generalized statement that ignores history.
Rick in Akron, Ohio, listening on Sirius XM. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan. Rick?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey,
thanks,
you're on the air.
Hey, I was wanting to ask the congressman, what is going on with the gerrymandering issue in Wisconsin? And I think it's going to the Supreme Court. I'm not really sure. But one thing I'd like you guys to also come about is, can this start at like a national way of setting up congressional districts in every state? Because we have the same problem in Ohio.
Yeah, Rick, you sure do. And so does Pennsylvania, and so does Michigan, and so does Wisconsin. And guess what? Those 4 states, we saw what happened last fall. In Wisconsin, which is not as bad as Michigan and Pennsylvania for sure, and I believe even Ohio, we had 100,000 more votes for Democratic candidates for Congress than Republicans, but they have 5 of the 8 seats. So, clearly gerrymandering is an important issue. You shouldn't have politicians picking their voters. It should be the other way around. In Wisconsin, it is going to the Supreme Court. They're hoping that their overreach will result in some new lines, and I think we're expecting to know later this fall on that, so that's important. And there are some measures. John Sarbanes from Maryland is head of a task force that I'm a member of that puts forth a number of, I guess I'll put them in the general good government ethics sort of issues, and certainly that is on the list. I have long been a supporter, since I've been in the state legislature, of a public drawing of maps like they do in Iowa and California and some other places. I think if you do that, there's certain standards we have to follow by law, but it shouldn't be done by people who, again, are looking at their own political futures. We need to have them be as fair and competitive as possible, and no question that has to happen. But there are some measures that we put forth in Congress to try to address those.
Okay. Mike in San Leandro, California. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, Tom. Hey, Congressman. I just was curious if you could riff for a minute on, why we can get nearly 200 Democrats to sue the president over emoluments, but barely over 100 to co-sponsor H.R. 676.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. So for everyone, H.R. 676, it's one of the few numbers of bills I know. I have to admit I'm not really good at doing them by number, is our Medicare for All bill. I think on the emoluments clause, this is something that's so immediate. If we don't deal with it now, there's going to be bad decisions made and more bad decisions made where we don't know necessarily if they're being made for the best interest of the Trump organization and Donald Trump or for the country. So that's why we're trying to address this right away. I guess I have a very different approach in general in life. I'm a silver lining guy. I try to look at almost anything and find the positive because I think it helps propel people to continue to do things to try to create change. And when it comes to Medicare for All, I was talking to Rick Nolan from Minnesota, northern Minnesota, and when he first was in Congress in 1974, he said there were 6 people that supported a Medicare for All type proposal that was put out there. And today we're at 111. The caucus chair, Joe Crowley, was the 111th person to sign on. You've got people who are not just progressives on that. You've got a much larger representation of our party now signing on. So the fact that we have our record number and it's moving in the right direction, I think it's happening out of this public debate around health care. And every town hall I do in my district or Paul Ryan's or when I go around the country and help other people, I think one of the biggest applause lines we have that comes up is around the Medicare for All. So I think we're moving in a good direction. We have to move the people who aren't there yet. But, I guess I'm a half glass full guy. And, if there's a way that we can kind of realize we're having success and progress on this, we still have a Republican House, Republican Senate, Republican White House. But if we can make progress on this, I think we're getting closer and closer to the day that we can be like every other major Western democracy and make sure that healthcare is a right, not a privilege.
Kyle in Cleveland, Tennessee. You are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi. I actually wanted to discuss something that has been a little swept under the rug here recently. We have a major opioid crisis in the country, which I would attribute to this nation's doctors and their sort of complicity with the pharmaceutical industry and overprescribing things per their directive. I think that patients have kind of gotten to the point where they take their information off of TV instead of back in the day, at a time when maybe I wasn't alive, someone who's 25, a time I don't remember when a doctor would tell you what you actually need to put in your body, instead of a Neulasta commercial or a Symbicort commercial or what have you, from almost anything underneath the
We're one of only 2 countries in the world that allows drug companies to retail advertise. And that only started about 20 years ago, maybe
and that's
less
sad.
than that.
And I think that's really sad because I don't think that drug companies necessarily have the patient's interest in mind, the best interest of the patient in mind, like a doctor would. As someone who entered into that profession to take care of people, hopefully, we hope our doctors do that, and I think a majority of them do. But I really wanted to touch on today Attorney General Jeff Sessions and his crackdown or promise to crack down on drugs and in particular marijuana, something that I think a lot of people that have really fatal illnesses like cancer and multiple sclerosis and things like that find a lot of solace in, and that's usually demonized as a recreational sort of crutch for the youth and all this type of stuff. But I will say, as someone who is young who does not smoke marijuana, that I've seen my friends firsthand receive medical benefits in proportions they'd never received from something they saw in a commercial, just from taking an oil or something like that. I'm not going to ask the congressman specifically to talk about that, but I really wanted to just discuss what's kind of going on in Capitol Hill as far as how we feel about Jeff Sessions and his sort of just targeting of, I think, of minorities of color through these initiatives and it's kind of class warfare, that type of thing. It's kind of a war in disguise. And
Kyle, got it. Let's toss it to the congressman, okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Kyle, well, thanks for your
Kyle.
question and comments. I think that one of the things, not just Attorney General Jeff Sessions, but people like Senator Grassley from Iowa and some others are in a very old mindset around the war on drugs, almost back to the Reagan-era mindset, rather than realizing when it comes to things like marijuana, I mean, if there was a drug war, we lost, right? I mean, this is something that clearly the American people don't agree with those politicians on these issues. That's why we have states that have legal marijuana. And when it comes to medical marijuana, I mean, I have talked to literally dozens and dozens and dozens of people over my career who've been helped by medical marijuana, and they have more control over their lives than a pill from big pharma that often can have negative consequences for them. So, I think the American public is way ahead, and I think I'm seeing more politicians. I mean, often we have some of these issues around marijuana, and we do have bipartisan groups that work on this. So I think for the most part, we're moving in the right direction on this. It's just, Jeff Sessions is kind of a dinosaur when it comes to his approach on marijuana, and we have to fight him where he's out of sync with the country. Just real quick on the opioid crisis, I'll tell you, there are so many alternatives to opioids, and I'm glad you brought up the issue as you did. We had a problem in Toma at our VA hospital that was overprescribing opioids, had a couple deaths, and now they're leading the country in alternative ways to deal with pain management, from natural substances to things like yoga and other areas. And I think we need to look at that because it's not just about big pharma making money off the newest pill. It's about really treating people's pain, and there's other ways to do it.
Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. We'll be back with in just a few minutes with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan. Congressman Pocan's website, Pocan, POCAN.house.gov. You can tweet him at @RepMarkPocan.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
More of your calls for the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus in just a moment. And welcome back. Patricia watching Free Speech TV on DirecTV in Portage, Wisconsin. Patricia, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, guys. I read yesterday that there's going to be testimony today on the SHARE Act. And how much are we supposed to share? I mean, this is more power to the people that have always controlled our lands. Now, as I understand it, opening up millions of acres of former wilderness to roads and shooting ranges and trapping and killing our wildlife, which is already 2/3 gone on the planet. So I'm wondering what progress you think, or lack of progress, is going to be made on this. They've been pushing for this for a long time.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not familiar with which committee and which House is even doing the hearing today. I apologize for that, Patricia. It's not on appropriations. That's the committee I serve on. But, I think if I can answer it slightly more generally, there's a lot of folks who are watching around executive orders, and especially things around the Antiquities Act and what could be slippery slope to try to sell off public lands. And I think that is something that we are watching very closely, and there's organizations around the country watching very closely. And we have to make sure that there's not backdoor attempts to sell off our public lands, especially in this current budget. If they're going to put $54 billion new into defense, cut everything else, and if they're trying to find revenue to then restore funding for things like the NIH, let's make sure that they don't try to then use this as a reason to try to fund something that's good and valid but never should have been cut in the first place. So I think on the front of watching those executive orders and Antiquities Act is especially important.
Mike in Kingsport in Tennessee, watching Free Speech TV. Mike, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Thank you. If things go as we hope they do and Trump care dies in the Republican Congress, I hope the Democrats are working on some proposals to put forward to improve Obamacare. There's been a lot of talk about how Obamacare needs to be improved. I haven't heard anything specifically that is being planned to put that forward in the event that Trump care dies. Thank you.
Sure, Mike, and great questions. First, let me just say something that I want to say a little differently, because I'm not sure Trump care is going to die in the Congress. Right now, there are a lot of initiatives in the Senate to pass something very close to what the House passed. This is the urgent time to reach out to senators to make sure they don't pass anything close to what the House did, or else 23 million people will lose health insurance, and older Americans will pay 5 times more, and people on Medicaid are going to have cuts, and on and on and on, and you could have people with pre-existing conditions not getting coverage. So the fight, it's not as easy as saying it's going to die in Congress. I would say just the opposite. Right now, it's not even on life support anymore. It's an active moving bill in the Senate. So let's keep that. That should be our focus. Secondarily, though, we've always said we know there are some problems that need to be fixed, but the bottom line is the fundamentals are there. 20 million people now have access to health insurance. If you have a pre-existing condition, you can now get health insurance, and we found a lot of people needed that. Women don't pay more than men. You don't have a lifetime cap. We actually were moving in the right direction, and there are things that we can absolutely do to fix it. But I don't want to lose focus on right now what's at jeopardy is that House bill could become law unless we stop it in the Senate now.
Yeah. Yep. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls later. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Congressman Mark Pocan on the line with you, taking your calls. And Casey in West Palm Beach, Florida. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Congressman. Thank you for your service, pal.
Oh, thank you, Casey.
Yeah. Listen, I got a couple questions, actually.
Please pick one.
Basically from the Comey investigation and now the Sessions investigation, pretty much a lot of questions weren't answered because of back room where they can't talk about it except in the back room. Do we legitimately, any of these discussions with both of these investigations, do we have any leg to stand on for legitimate impeachment of Trump? And, or are we just going to have egg on our face?
Casey, a great question. This week, Brad Sherman said he's going to be dropping articles of impeachment. I think here's the real issue that we have to remember with anything around impeachment. Well, certainly if you look at the criteria, you could say I think he's done some of these things, from the emoluments clause to involvement perhaps with Russia and more that could come out. The problem is you don't have impeachment just because you've got some things to point to that you think are impeachable. You have to pass it through Congress, which is a Republican majority in the House and Senate. So we have to get to the point that we have such good, solid information that it's irrefutable and that we can get GOP support to do the right thing. And I think what we're trying to do is keep impeachment on the table, absolutely, that it's an option. We have to if we can't get answers, and if we find out there was collusion or, on the emoluments clause, if we find out that, there's some problems on that, we need to keep every option on the table, but we can't do it unless there's GOP support. So we have to really make sure we've got a case that you're taking in, just like a prosecutor. You don't take it to the court until you know you can win it. And I think that's what many of us who are very concerned about what's going on are doing. And I think we just have to keep aware that's how you actually have an impeachment occur.
Kathy in Concord, California. Hey, Kathy, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. I'm actually in Concord, North Carolina.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So we have our own little bag of tricks here in North Carolina. Yeah. Thank you for taking my call, Congressman. I just had a question. I have so many people, my dad included, who is very, very conservative, and they're kind of, coming this way a little bit. But they still have this argument that they use that Democrats are just as corrupt as Republicans, and money is just as involved in their situation and their decisions as the other side. And I think that's probably conservative news that has, pushed that narrative. But what do you say to that? I mean, what's the likelihood of getting money out of politics so that it's not such a factor and something that they can just keep going back to?
Yeah, well, and he's right on the fundamentals, right? Money is a corrupting influence regardless of your political party. However, I think what I would point to is what party is the party that has members signing on to constitutional amendments to get rid of Citizens United, on provisions to make sure that we protect voting rights, to make sure that we're taking money out of politics. There's only one political party doing that. That's the Democrats right now, and you can point to that, and I think that's the difference. So while I think you're right, Fox and everyone else wants to make everyone pregnant when, one side is 9 months and the other side maybe a couple weeks to a month. They want to, just make it even across the board. I have hope because I watch, right now John Sarbanes has got a number of us who are working with him on a task force that's all about, good government measures from campaign finance to ethics to voting rights. And we've got people like John Lewis here, and we've got all the leaders on the movement nationally are within the Democratic Party, and that's the difference. So while we may not be perfect with every single member and we have work to do, we certainly are the ones that trying to affect the change, and the grassroots are certainly there. And I think if we had the opportunity to be back in the majority, the grassroots can help us get these things done.
Amen. Did you just say we have 1 minute left? Oh, we have 2 minutes left. Okay, we can take one more call here. Grace, we have 2 minutes to the end of the show, or the end of the hour, rather. Grace in Detroit, you got a quick question for Congressman Pocan?
Thank you, Congressman. Yes, what, if anything, is Congress doing to restore fair elections?
Yeah, and Grace, I think I might have just pointed to a little bit of it. I mean, we do have a number of provisions. We have a task force dealing with this. I don't anticipate this Congress under Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell doing anything to be helpful, but I think that's where we're fighting this, one, with the grassroots, groups like Move to Amend and United to Amend back home in Wisconsin, trying to address things like Citizens United and getting rid of that terrible decision. But we've got to fight for everything from campaign finance reform to voter integrity to fighting, this. What we most recently saw was the Russians now hacking into multiple states' election systems and into companies that make voting machine systems. There's a lot we need to do, but there are bills out there. There are avenues for us to do this. There's groups nationally working on this, and I think this is one where from the grassroots we really can be effective and win on these issues.
Congressman, final thoughts for the week?
Final thoughts for the week. I mean, this is we're in the middle of the summer, what should be the appropriation season. I serve on the appropriations, Tom, so I think about that more than ever. They won't share with us what the allocations are for various areas. What that means is we'll be passing like defense and military budget bills first, leaving us with probably nothing left for things like Meals on Wheels and Special Olympics and after-school programs and Pell Grants and the National Institutes of Health research dollars. We have to keep an eye on that as well. There's a lot to fight right now. We're all, Russia gets a lot of attention, but this bad budget, health care going through the Senate, infrastructure package, the real need for one, we have to keep focused on all those, and I hope people keep an eye to those as well.
We have about 30 seconds. What's the status of the Congressional Progressive Caucus's budget that you guys laid out?
Yeah, we put it out so early, and they're still moving slowly on everything on the Republican side with theirs. But we've put out a different set of principles that show a people path forward. We've got 120,000 people have signed online supporting it. Over 70 major organizations. We drafted it with the outside organizations. This is a people's budget, and we're proud to put it out there to show the contrast.
Yeah, and that's, in my opinion, a really important thing to do. So, Congressman, thanks so much for being with us today.
Absolutely, Tom. Thank you.
Great talking with you. Congressman Mark Pocan, his website, pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at Rep, R-E-P, Mark Pocan, M-A-R-K, Pocan, P-O-C-A-N. And we're going to be back. Dr. Graham Allison is dropping by. He's got a new book out. It's called Destined for War, America and China Escape Thucydides' Trap. It's a fascinating concept. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com. Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by EcoWine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, EcoWine.com.
Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242
or visit tomsbeets.com.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Free Speech TV fund drive today, fundraising drive today. And Free Speech TV needs your help. Please call 877-378-8669 and help us keep this network going. Keep it rolling along. With a $60 contribution, there is the Free Speech TV, or the ACLU rather, Pocket Constitution. This comes not with just the Constitution, but also a little commentary about the Constitution and, you know, what to do if you're arrested or taken to a police station. What if the police come to your home? If you're stopped for questioning, if you're stopped in your car. Lots of interesting stuff in here in this little pocket Constitution. Also, the ACLU has published Know Your Rights cards, to know your rights at demonstrations and protests, and know your rights if you're gay and going to college. So got the book and the cards. So that's the $60 gift, or $5 a month for a year. With a $120 gift, you get a copy of Howard Zinn's book, A People's History of the United States. With a $240 gift, you get a copy of my book, What Would Jefferson Do? And a pocket Constitution, and the 2 Know Your Rights cards, and a Free Speech TV sticker. And with a $360 gift, or $30 a month for a year, you get the People's History of the U.S., the Voices of the People's History, the Pocket Constitution, the Free Speech TV sticker. And with a $1,000 contribution, come to Washington, D.C., and we'll have lunch. And there's a pizza place down at the end of the street. There's a Thai restaurant around the corner. There's an Ethiopian restaurant downstairs. There's all kinds of great food around here. And although if we get, you know, a couple people together, sometimes we'll have 2 or 3 or 4. Actually, I think only once if we ever had 4. But you know, Free Speech TV, $1,000 donors, and you know, we just typically then, you know, if everybody's up for it, we'll go to pizza or Thai or something, whatever. Anyhow, so we call it the pizza party. Also, Steve is holding his $10,000 matching pledge throughout this week. So your donations up to $10,000 will be doubled. So yesterday, you know, we're trying to hit. I'm trying to hit $10,000 a day. We have not done it yet, and we had, I think, about a $4,000 a day yesterday, which is down. Last Friday was around 6. So, you know, we're not hitting our goals, and we need you to step up if you possibly can. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. Free Speech TV is an extraordinary and unique thing, and it, you know, needs your support, needs your help. It's you know, at a certain level, it's almost like, you know, what am I willing to pay for real news? What am I willing to pay for unfiltered? What am I willing to pay to get the straight scoop? Right? And, you know, or what's it worth in terms of, you know, my time and effort and things? If you, for example, if you can't make a contribution, and I know many of you are living on fixed incomes, and I, you know, I wouldn't want you to hurt yourself for Free Speech TV. But if you can't make a contribution, you can talk about Free Speech TV on your Facebook page or on Twitter or on Instagram or Snapchat or whatever you happen to use, or just send an email to your friends and neighbors saying, hey, you know, check out Free Speech TV. You know, tell people where it is on Dish and DirecTV and how they can find it at freespeech.org. Make it a personal mission to you know, every week have at least 2 or 3 or 4 new people introduced to Free Speech TV. We need to grow the viewership base for Free Speech TV, as well as keep the network alive. And so you can contribute with money, which is like really needed right now. But if you can't contribute with money, there's still a lot of things that you can do to help support Free Speech TV. So please seriously think about that, of, you know, making a commitment to say, you know, okay, I'm going to help, you know, I can't give to Free Speech TV, but I probably know 3 people who can. And I want to, you know, get them familiar with Free Speech TV in the hopes that they'll get hooked and become regular viewers. And you know, then maybe donors. I mean, you don't call somebody up and say, hey, you ought to watch this so you can donate to it. But it's really how it works. I mean, you know, we need, as Free Speech TV needs more viewers, and here's a mechanism, a tool, an opportunity to do it, and that is, you know, you engaging yourself. And also, Free Speech TV needs some help, and, you know, needs to pay the bills. And, you know, if it's worth a bag of popcorn at the movies to you every month, you know, $10, $15 a month, $20 a month, great. And, you know, if it's worth more than that to you, great. If it's, you know, however you like to support Free Speech TV, please call now. We have this week slipped behind, and we really need your help. Please call 877-378-8660. Thanks, Tim.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and on the line with us, Dr. Graham Allison. Dr. Allison is the director of Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, the Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs, the author of a new book, Destined for War: Can America and China Escape Thucydides' Trap? The website, hks.harvard.edu. You can tweet at Kennedy_school. Dr. Allison, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me, and thanks for the historical readout that I just heard. It's not many radio programs in which people remind us about history.
Well, thank you. That was, yeah, thank you. First of all, not being a Greek scholar, I don't know if I'm mispronouncing his name, but what is Thucydides' trap?
Well, you're doing well. So yeah, Thucydides, for your listeners though, the fact that it's multisyllabic is not too hard.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's a mouthful, it is. But Thucydides is easy to say. So Thucydides, okay. And I think you're going to hear more about Thucydides. Thucydides was the founder of history, as we know it. He was the first person to try to write down what actually happened and get the facts right. And he thought that was important because it was for the purpose of successive generations being able to read what had been done in the conflict between Greece and Sparta in classical Greece, and learn those lessons and not make those mistakes again. So Thucydides wrote about this famously, a line that says, quote, "It was the rise of Athens and the fear that this instilled in Sparta that made war inevitable." So this pattern is as old as history itself, and it's the best image or best lens, I think, for understanding what's happening in the relations between a rising China and a ruling U.S.
So, in essence, it sounds like what you're saying, Thucydides' trap is that when one state is rising and at risk of eclipsing another state in terms of political, economic, or military power, that simple act in and of itself triggers an inevitable or often frequent common confrontation, military confrontation?
Absolutely, but a little more complicated, but you got the basic. So a rising power that credibly threatens to displace or eclipse a ruling power creates a deep structural stress between the two parties. So the rising power very naturally thinks, I'm bigger, I'm stronger, my interests deserve more weight than they used to get. I deserve more say, I deserve more sway. The current arrangements are confining because they were made before I even counted. So this is all very natural. And the ruling state thinks, wait a minute, the status quo is the way things are and the way things should be. And the status quo has actually provided the order that's allowed you, rising state, to rise. How did you become bigger and stronger? So this dynamic in what's called by social scientists hierarchical dominance systems, you can see this in gorillas when the alpha gorilla is challenged by a wannabe. You can even see it in companies when an incumbent is challenged by a disruptive upstart. Take the taxi industry and Uber, or Google and Apple versus Microsoft and Netscape. We can even see it in families. So in any case, Thucydides says in international relations, when a rising power threatens to displace a ruling power, this creates a pattern of behavior by both of them in which there's zero trust, because I really think what you want to do is displace me.
Right.
And you think what I really want to do is keep you down. And misunderstandings are then magnified, and then most importantly, external actions that would otherwise be inconsequential or easily manageable can trigger actions and reactions by the two of us that end up in a place neither of us want to be. So in the book, I look at 16 cases in the last 500 years, 12 of them ended in war, 4 of them in no war. So inevitable is exaggeration. But in these conditions, rarely does one party or the other say, I think this is a good time for a war. So not that. Rather, what happens is, like World War I, Germany is rising rapidly, creating fear in Britain. Britain and Germany get more entangled with each other, with the lies. And then the assassination of an archduke in Sarajevo by a Serbian terrorist, which would otherwise have been an inconsequential event that hardly would have gone noticed and certainly wouldn't have had any great ricochet effect, became, in effect, a match that created a fire that at the end of the story had burnt down the whole House of Europe.
Yeah. Are you suggesting that this is the collision course on which the United States and China are going? They seem to be the major rising power in the world right now.
I argue in the book that business as usual will likely produce history as usual. But on the other hand, this is not a pessimistic or fatalistic book. Only those who fail to study history are condemned to repeat it. So if, God forbid, America and China find themselves in a war next year or the year after or this year, for example, if the North Korean events that are currently going on become like the assassinations in Sarajevo, a trigger to we respond by attacking North Korea, then North Korea attacks South Korea, then South Korea and the U.S. attack North Korea to try to suppress, and pretty soon you have the Second Korean War.
Right. Now, although in this case, China and North Korea have a mutual defense pact, and so they would jump in just like we would with South Korea. Now we're at war with China.
Right. And you would say, does anybody in China want a war with the U.S.? Absolutely not. Anybody in the U.S. want a war with China? No. But Kim Jong-un is not consulting either of us. He's doing his actions. He's under some pressure from us and under some pressure for them. But I don't believe that in Beijing there's any sympathy for Kim Jong-un. If they could make him go away, they would. But when they look at it, as I've talked to a lot of Chinese about this, they say, well, and this goes back to the Thucydidean dynamic, there really wouldn't be a problem on the Korean Peninsula if you weren't there.
Yeah.
What are the Americans doing there right, next to our border? And we say, wait a minute. We're there because North Korea attacked South Korea. We came to South Korea's defense. South Korea is a great success story. It's a democracy, a market economy, the 13th largest economy in the world. So we're not going anywhere. And they think, yeah, that's just what you're doing. You're trying to surround us and contain us and keep us from the natural influence that we should have as we've now become big, strong, and great.
So John Pilger made a movie that came out about 6 months ago called The Coming War with China. It's an hour-long documentary, and in it he goes through this whole narrative of how the United States has basically encircled China. We've got 400 military bases around them. The Spratly Islands are becoming a provocation. China is militarizing these islands that we're still not recognizing as Chinese territory. We're moving warships into the area. He's just coming right out and saying there is going to be war with China, and the United States is is blundering into it, essentially. I'm not sure I fully agree with that analysis, but what, in your opinion, what can or should we do to avoid something like Thucydides' trap, a war with China?
Let me. I haven't seen the movie, but I will look at it. In the book, I have a chapter called "From Here to War," in which I trace out 5 paths in which, by simply putting one foot in front of the other, the way we have been doing, I would characterize what we've been doing for the whole 21st century as business as usual. So both under Obama and under Bush and under Xi and under his predecessor. So if we just, in these 5 scenarios, just putting one foot in front of the other, for example, China building islands and then militarizing islands and then doing their 9-dash line, in which they say all of these territories in the South China Sea belong to us. And then even saying, as I have a little riff in the book on a Chinese guy tells me, he says, look at your own map. What's the name of this body of water that's on our border? It's called the South China Sea. It's not called the American Sea. So why should the U.S. Navy be the arbiter of events in the South China Sea of who owns an island or who can build an island? And we say, wait a minute, we've been there since Midway. The presence of the U.S. Navy has provided the international order for Asia that's allowed all of Asia, including you, to have the greatest period of growth you ever saw in the world. So you should be very grateful for having us there. They say, just the way Teddy Roosevelt said to the British and to the Spanish, we're now big and strong, so get the hell out of our hemisphere. We said. They're saying, basically, you're the problem, not us. Yeah. So what to do, I think first is most important is to recognize this inherent structural stress, which makes credible something like Sarajevo producing an outcome nobody wants, as opposed to incredible. And it's very hard for most listeners, most people in America today, to imagine a war between great powers because, God help us, we've had 7 decades without any great power wars. So students of mine at Harvard often say, wait a minute, that's just last century, past century, that's gone, consigned to the dustbin of history. But again, that's historically ignorant. Great power, long periods without great power wars are anomalies. So we should be grateful for it. We should work hard to maintain it. We should recognize what things have been done to help maintain it. So first is recognize the danger. Secondly, you would hope that Americans and Chinese leaders would sit down like adults and say, look at this situation. This is very dangerous. How can we work together to manage this fellow Kim Jong-un or similar events in the South China Sea? And in some of those cases, that's going to require compromise and adaptation and adjustment, which, of course, ruling powers don't like to do.
So we and the Chinese need to acknowledge this right up front and start negotiating is the wrong word, but start talking about compromise.
Right. Well, working our way through the ways in which
the new world order, essentially.
Yeah. If you imagine, I test students. Imagine there were adult supervision. Now, first, notice there's not. In international affairs, there's a jungle. There's nobody superior to Trump and Xi. But let's imagine, just for hypothetically, there were. So there's this Martian adult strategist, and she parachutes down to Mar-a-Lago.
We just have about 20 seconds, sir.
Okay, it says, guys, look, be adults. Look at your problems. You have big problems, each of you, for yourself. You should figure out how to deal with this, and if you can't, let me give you some suggestions. So I would say, let's imagine some adult behavior in both parties, and I think if so, we can escape Thucydides.
There you go. A marvelous suggestion. Dr. Graham Allison, director of Harvard's Kennedy School of Government's Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs, author of the new book, Destined for War, Can America and China Escape Thucydides' Trap? Dr. Allison, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be back with your calls and more of the news of the day right after this. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Mary in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Hey, Mary, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's on your mind?
Hello, Tom. Thank you for taking my call. It's been a very long time since I've called, and I actually had a question for Representative Program, but I can ask you as well because maybe you saw this morning. I turned on the television and saw this event that had happened, the shooting, and I saw Representative Rodney Davis interviewed by MSNBC, and I was shocked by what he said. He essentially said that aggressive rhetoric on social media was the cause of this shooting and called aggressive rhetoric hate speech. And I do a lot of aggressive rhetoric on social media. And I know sometimes, you use words like fascist. I happen to use the word genocide to refer to a healthcare program that will cause the deaths of the old, sick, poor, and disabled. And that is very aggressive rhetoric, but I wouldn't call it hate speech. And I feel like he was trying to send a message that we should censor ourselves, that Democrats and progressives should censor ourselves.
Yeah,
and it's our fault that that this shooting happened.
Yeah, this is already ricocheting around the conservative corners of Twitter and Facebook right now, and they're starting to drop little bits of it into Fox News, and I'm guessing that right-wing hate radio is just going nuts with it. But typically, here we have seen more white right-wingers commit acts of terrorism in the United States since 9/11 than even Muslim terrorists, who are the great bugaboo of the right. And I was asking out loud the other day, or I was talking to a conservative and on the TV show, and pointed out, he was like, "Oh, you lefties, you are also violent." I'm like, when was the last time? It's the last time I can remember was back, the Weather Underground days, like 1970, 71, the end of the Weather Underground. And so now we've got one lefty who has, self-proclaimed lefty anyway, who has committed a heinous crime. It doesn't mean that you shut down the left any more than some guy quoting Rand Paul shooting somebody or having, Rush Limbaugh's book in his house means that you shut down the right. We still need to have a vigorous and healthy conversation in this country. And, I get what you're saying, Mary. I don't know what to do about it, but I get it.
My next door neighbor is the person who called me to notify me to turn on my television because I didn't have it on. And what he said, he's a conservative. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, "Now, I don't want you to call me back after you see what's going on." Mm-hmm. He said, "Because I know you're going to get all riled up about this and start tweeting and things like that." He said, "And, I'm afraid they're watching you." Huh. And I don't want to be part of it.
Yeah. I'm guessing this is going to lead to higher levels of security here in Washington, D.C., certainly for members of Congress. But I don't know. We're just going to have to take this whole thing, as it goes along. Mary, thank you for the call. It's just a tragedy. Bernie gave a great speech about it this morning in the Senate. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Valerie with Free Speech TV. We're proud to provide you with independent, unfiltered news and documentaries. And as our valued viewer, you can help us continue bringing Free Speech TV well into the future. Join our Pearly Gate Rebels, our planned giving program. Your gift of any size will help ensure democracy endures through an informed citizenry. You can donate property, money, or assets. It's easy. My spouse and I are proud Pearly Gate Rebels. We're doing our part to ensure that Free Speech TV will be here to deliver thought-provoking news and information well into the future. Join us. Call 877-378-8669 or email me at valerie@freespeech.org. Rebel against media owned by billionaires and become one of our pearly gate rebels today.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And Jill in Princeton, Minnesota. Hey, Jill, what's on your mind today?
Well, hi, Tom. Newt Gingrich on Fox, early hours, spoke of progressives as a psychological dislocation and a sickness in people. Verbatim. He further says that the moderate Democrats will pull away from this. When I posted this on my Stand Up Brainers Like Anything Goes page, this is, I think, before the shooting. And whether it was or not, I guess to me, I haven't heard. I'm in Minnesota. I am isolated from. This is the first time I've heard, people being called a psychological.
Well, Michael Savage, about 6 years ago, wrote a book called "Liberalism is a Psychological Disease" or a psychiatric condition. Words to that effect.
It bothered me that much that I had to post it.
Yeah.
Right in between all the goodness that has been happening with our area to unite people. And it just really bothered me. I check in from time to time, sometimes for a laugh, mostly for just jaw-dropping. Really?
Yeah, I've got Fox on the monitor. Actually, not right now. I had it on for a couple of hours just to see how they were spinning all this. And Newt was on, actually. But it was during the show. I had the volume off, so I don't know what they were saying. But this idea that has been promoted that, by the right, that the idea that we're all in this together, that, frankly, the standards, the ideals on which this country was founded, of community and I was going to say fraternity, although it's kind of sexist, but, thinking of the community, fraternity. What was the old French slogan? Equality, fraternity, and something else, but whatever. There's the idea that we're all in this together. To characterize that as some sort of a mental illness is like just so bizarre. Jill, thank you for the call. We'll be back. Coming up on 28 minutes past.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Back with your calls. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Free Speech TV Fund Drive today, fundraising drive today. And Free Speech TV needs your help. Please call 877-378-8669 and help us keep this network going. Keep it rolling along. With a $60 contribution, there is the Free Speech TV, or the ACLU rather, Pocket Constitution. This comes not with just the Constitution, but also a little commentary about the Constitution and, what to do if you're arrested or taken to a police station, what if the police come to your home, if you're stopped for questioning, if you're stopped in your car. Lots of interesting stuff in here in this little pocket Constitution. Also, the ACLU has published Know Your Rights cards, to know your rights at demonstrations and protests, and know your rights if you're gay and going to college. So got the book
and the cards. So that's the $60 gift, or $5 a month for a year. With a $120 gift, you get a copy of Howard Zinn's book, A People's History of the United States. With a $240 gift, you get a copy of my book, What Would Jefferson Do? And a pocket constitution, and the 2 Know Your Rights cards, and a Free Speech TV sticker. And with a $360 gift, or $30 a month for a year, you get the People's History of the U.S., the Voices of the People's History, the Pocket Constitution, the Free Speech TV sticker. And with a $1,000 contribution, come to Washington, D.C., and we'll have lunch. And there's a pizza place down at the end of the street. There's a Thai restaurant around the corner. There's an Ethiopian restaurant downstairs. There's all kinds of great food around here. And although if we get, a couple people together, sometimes we'll have 2 or 3 or 4. Actually, I think only once if we ever had 4. But Free Speech TV, $1,000 donors, and we just typically then, if everybody's up for it, we'll go to pizza or Thai or something, whatever. Anyhow, so we call it the pizza party. Also, Steve is holding his $10,000 matching pledge throughout this week. So your donations up to $10,000 will be doubled. So yesterday, we're trying to hit. I'm trying to hit $10,000 a day. We have not done it yet, and we had, I think, about a $4,000 a day yesterday, which is down. Last Friday was around 6. So, we're not hitting our goals, and we need you to step up if you possibly can. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. Free Speech TV is an extraordinary and unique thing, and it, needs your support, needs your help. It's at a certain level, it's almost like, what am I willing to pay for real news? What am I willing to pay for unfiltered? What am I willing to pay to get the straight scoop? Right? And or what's it worth in terms of my time and effort and things? If you, for example, if you can't make a contribution, and I know many of you are living on fixed incomes, and I wouldn't want you to hurt yourself for Free Speech TV. But if you can't make a contribution, you can talk about Free Speech TV on your Facebook page or on Twitter or on Instagram or Snapchat or whatever you happen to use, or just send an email to your friends and neighbors saying, hey, check out Free Speech TV. Tell people where it is on Dish and DirecTV and how they can find it at freespeech.org. Make it a personal mission to every week have at least 2 or 3 or 4 new people introduced to Free Speech TV. We need to grow the viewership base for Free Speech TV, as well as keep the network alive. And so you can contribute with money, which is really needed right now. But if you can't contribute with money, there's still a lot of things that you can do to help support Free Speech TV. So please seriously think about that, of making a commitment to say, okay, I'm going to help. I can't give to Free Speech TV, but I probably know 3 people who can, and I want to get them familiar with Free Speech TV in the hopes that they'll get hooked and become regular viewers, and then maybe donors. I mean, you don't call somebody up and say, hey, you ought to watch this so you can donate to it. But it's really how it works. I mean, we need, as Free Speech TV needs more viewers, and here's a mechanism, a tool, an opportunity to do it, and that is, you engaging yourself. And also, Free Speech TV needs some help, and needs to pay the bills. And if it's worth a bag of popcorn at the movies to you every month, $10, $15 a month, $20 a month, great. And if it's worth more than that to you, great. If it's however you like to support Free Speech TV, please call now. We have this week slipped behind, and we really need your help. Please call 877-378-8660. Thanks.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Boy, what a sad day. Anyhow, Mike in Winneconne, Wisconsin. Am I saying that right, Mike?
Yeah, that's Winneconne.
Winneconne. Great. So what's up?
Well, I found it odd that nothing happened when Gabby Gifford was gunned down, and the students of Sandy Hook didn't seem their lives mattered. And I was wondering how fast Congress will react to gun laws now that they have firsthand witnessed multiple rounds in hunting rifles and aimed right at them. It was talking about, thought it was a war zone, and this happens every day on the streets of the United States.
Yeah. Mike, that you're getting dangerously close to suggesting that this is that there might be some good outcome from this, that this might be a reasonable tactic to cause Republicans to consider gun control, and I think that's a very, very dangerous road to go down. I understand what you're saying, but it's I'm not going to go there at all, and I don't think any of us should. I mean, we just need to say clearly, explicitly, unambiguously that this is not acceptable. It's just plain old flat out not acceptable. And in fact, Bernie came out and gave a little speech earlier. We may have the video for it in a little bit, but I can read the text. He said, "I've just been informed that the alleged shooter at the Republican baseball practice is someone who apparently volunteered on my presidential campaign. I am sickened by this despicable act. Let me be as clear as I can be. Violence of any kind is unacceptable in our society, and I condemn this action in the strongest possible terms. Real change can only come about through nonviolent action, and anything else runs against our most deeply held American values. My hopes and prayers are that Representative Scalise, congressional staff, and the Capitol police officers who were wounded make a quick and full recovery. I also want to thank the Capitol Police for their heroic actions to prevent further harm." And that was Senator Sanders, and because the guy who was the shooter had actually canvassed in Iowa on behalf of Bernie, and that fact is going to be, it's already featured hugely in right-wing internet media, and the trolls are starting to show up on my Twitter feed. I'm sure they're over on our Facebook page. I haven't been there, and there'll be more. And we all just have to absolutely condemn violence. I mean, it's just there is. I was going to say outside of war, but I even think that the vast majority of wars are mass insanity. They're should not be happening. So, let's be very careful with our language right now. Holly in Silver Spring, Maryland. Hey, Holly, what's up?
Yeah, well, I want to kind of piggyback on that. Why are we giving up our argument about gun violence? I mean, it doesn't matter who did it. Why don't we stand up with a backbone and say, yes, this is exactly what we're talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Don't get all caught up in all this, who it was. It was still easy access to guns, no doubt, that did it. But anyways, a lot of things since I've been holding on. One of the other things that I wanted to say is that Karen had mentioned about, how are Democrats different than Republicans. One thing is Democrats are trying to maintain the government system where the Republicans are trying to rip it down. And the Democrats are there to protect us, and we're part of that system. On the Republican side, their constituents are not part of the system. They don't include them, and they don't care about them.
Their constituents being the billionaires who own the party, basically.
Or the poor schmo that is, toiling away in a coal mine. That's their constituent too, and those are the people who they lie to. So on the Democratic side, we are, we want to preserve our system for we the people. And another thing I wanted to say real quick is people keep talking about Hillary being a flawed candidate. One thing I'd like to say is I think the Democratic Party is more flawed because we don't stand up for our own. And I coined a little phrase, Hillaried, and it rhymes with pilloried. And our next candidate, sure as you're sitting there, our next candidate is going to get Hillaried, and we're going to get caught flat-footed once again and not know how to take up when they start lying about that candidate and saying insane things that the left just didn't say, you know what, that's insane. So I think the left is really weak when it comes to, because we don't use scare tactics, we don't respond to scare tactics, then we don't feel scared until we've got an orange Mussolini in the White House. And now we're all running around with our heads cut off. So next time you get a candidate, you may not think they're perfect. I mean, this is something, that perfect and, and the purity test and everything, forget that, let's go get behind that person, because we know that the other side is not going to represent us at all in government and in our lives. So, it just kills me, because I keep hearing this over and over about, she wasn't a perfect candidate. Nobody's a perfect candidate. Nobody's a perfect person. Nothing is perfect. And I think that people go down this road of, perfection and putting people on pedestals. Screw the pedestal thing. We need somebody to go in there and kick some butt,
I don't disagree with you, Holly. It is broadly important that I remember the Backbone campaign that Bill Moyer was doing. Not the famous Bill Moyers, but a fellow by the name of Bill Moyer who came up with this, giving Backbone Awards, little spines to Democrats who stood up and spoke out. And there's more and more doing so. And I think it's a great thing. I mean, that's the Congressional Progressive Caucus that we're identifying. Holly, thank you for your call. Donald in Aurora, Illinois. Hey, Donald, what's on your mind?
Yes, hi, Tom. Yeah, I've been watching this thing too with the shooter. Unfortunately, I was so afraid that they were going to say it was either a Democrat or a Bernie supporter, because
my first fear was
the mark on us. We don't subscribe to violence in any form, and you could bet your boots every time a right winger pulls something like that, his name is going to be mentioned. This guy.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it's happened, and what it does now, it makes victims out of them, out of the Republican Party. It's bad enough they're already supposedly being victimized by the courts and all the other stuff that's going on. One thing I'm going to say, and I said it before, they better not impeach this Trump. Let the buffoon run all 4 years, because if they don't, they're going to make a martyr out of him, and they're going to solidify themselves. And let them push this health care through, too, because if the Democrats are foolish enough to have their fingerprints on there to fix things, and some little thing doesn't work right, they're going to get the blame for the whole thing, and all it's going to do is justify their reasoning to put in a health care that only represents really a tax break for the riches.
Yeah. Okay, good point, Donald, particularly the latter. Thank you. Scott in Missoula, Montana. Hey, Scott, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Yeah, I wanted to talk about the mind of the right winger. I'm a professional pilot and fly with a lot of right wingers. In fact, one of them is a retired major in the Air Force. And when we sit down at dinner to talk, I can almost know exactly what he's going to say, because each of them is, everything we talk about is right off Fox News. So they're very authoritarian. They like to have people tell them what to do. They like order. They hate disorder, and they do think a lot different than, I think, left-wing people, but not for the better in any respect.
Okay. All right. Okay, Scott, thank you very much for the call. Boy. We'll be back. We're going to check in with Talk Media News today, and we'll continue taking your calls. We're kind of processing, what's going on here. I don't think it's a day for strong rhetoric. It's a day for mourning, basically. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Or maybe a reflection is a better word. But, there's something not right here. We'll be back. And welcome back. Mark in Las Vegas. Hey, Mark, what's up?
Hi, hold on.
there. I think I took it off of.
Sounds fine, Mark. What's up?
All right, very good. Very quickly, I want to make the point that in the several hours since the shooting this morning, when I look back at the statistics, on average, 3 people are slaughtered every hour, and several people are shot and injured by guns in this country, and that's every hour of every day. And so, when is it appropriate to discuss gun violence and gun control in this country, since after every incident like this, the cry goes out that now is not the time? When is the correct time?
Actually, every time there's an incident like this, the Democrats all say, hey, let's talk about, gun violence and gun control. And the Republicans all go, oh, you're using this as an excuse. It's not the time to talk. I think it is the time to talk about it. And, I've got a whole sheet here of gun violence statistics. I was going to go off on a rant about it.
Sure. May I add?
Go ahead.
Something to that as well. Of course, we're on the same side of reality here. But there was a report in 2010 that somebody did. It's the Pacific Institute for Research and Evaluation, where they looked at the economic cost for 1 year of gun violence in 2010. Their best estimate was $174 billion for 1 year.
Yeah, and that included the indirect costs. The direct costs were around $8 billion, as I recall.
Something on that order, yes.
Yeah.
But or more than that. But the point is that if you want to tackle healthcare as well, stronger gun control is a good way. If we're not filling up our emergency rooms and hospitals and other places with the dead and wounded, what would that do for us?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Terry McAuliffe, the governor of Virginia, was on TV this morning, and he said we have 93. He first said 93 million people, Americans a day, are killed by guns. One of the reporters said, "Did you say a million?" And he said, "No, I meant 93 people a day." And as I recall, that was the number he was quoting. But it's mind-boggling. Tens of thousands of Americans every year are killed with guns, and it doesn't happen in other developed countries.
Right, and I want to make the strong point that it's not just the deaths. There are over 100,000 injuries. So add that to the cost. And those aren't people that go into the hospital for a couple of days and come out whole. Scalise is not going to come out the same person as he went in. Right. Apparently, he was shot in the hip, and that means, long-term pain and disability for him.
And long-term rehabilitation. Yeah, it's going to be.
That's going to cost too. But lucky for him, the Republicans have exempted themselves from their own new health care bill, I understand. That they'll get access.
How so?
My understanding is that the American Health Care Act specifically exempted Congress from their new legislation, that they would still be able to get something similar or stronger than the ACA for themselves and their staff.
I think that was not specific to Congress. It was specific to any wealthy person in this country. And then Congress could go. I think that they were repealing the provision that was inserted into Obamacare at the demand of Republicans, that every member of Congress had to have Obamacare, which they all do right now. And the horribly named ACH, whatever it is, the American Health Care, where they appropriated the ACA part through an agent, would just open that up. Anyhow, Mark, thanks a lot for the call. We'll be back. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Ellen Ratner on the line with us with Talk Media News, brought to you by Ellen's new book, Loving What You Do and the Elements of Great Working Life, and goatsfortheoldgoat.com. Hey, Ellen.
Well, you can give a goat for Father's Day, so don't forget about that.
Okay,
or even a partial goat.
I still have a few days.
Okay, that's right, and you are a father. So it's interesting, Congressman, you were just talking about this. Scalise was shot in the hip. It looks like twice, 2 Capitol Police. It looks like one may have been a woman, Crystal Greiner and David Bailey. And then there was a person who works for Texas Representative Roger Williams, as well as the government relations for Tyson Foods, who was a former staffer. The shooter, James Hodgkinson of Illinois, is actually, he was 66 years old, and he died. Now, the president, who, by the way, is having a birthday today, he's 71 years old, and today is Flag Day, the president actually gave what I consider a very presidential speech. It was only about 4.5 minutes today. He canceled his event at the Labor Department, didn't feel it was appropriate. However, we do know that Ivanka Trump had a event at the White House where she invited many people, and many people who work for the government, as well as other independent CEOs, et cetera, to talk about workforce development. What she said is that without workforce development, people don't have the skills to be hired. And, of course, this is something that Donald Trump is on big time, and that's what he was supposed to talk about at the Labor Department.
Or at least he says he's on big time. I haven't seen him create any jobs.
Okay, we'll see. Right, exactly. Yeah. Now, also, Senator Bernie Sanders issued a statement today. He said he's been informed that the alleged shooter was apparently volunteered it as a presidential campaign. He said, I'm sickened by this despicable act. Let me be as clear as I can be. Violence of any kind is unacceptable in our society, and I condemn this action in the strongest possible terms. Meanwhile, just because they've never missed an opportunity, some PR agencies, one is a public relations firm in one of the suburbs of Washington named Javelin, they are now advertising a guy by the name of Dan Weber. He is from the Conservative Voice and CEO of the Association of Mature American Citizens. He said this act is neither random nor a coincidence because Republicans have been systematically and repeatedly dehumanized and stigmatized as fascists, racists, and bigots. So he wants to get on and talk about that, if you can believe it.
Yeah, no, I do believe it because I've seen it all over the place.
It's kind of crazy. Okay. Meanwhile, earlier today, Politico released a poll in the morning before the shooting occurred, because the shooting occurred around 7:30 in the morning, and it was conducted in the days following Comey's appearance before the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. It said that 45% of the voters trust the Comey to tell the truth, compared to 32% for Trump. Very interesting. Okay. Yesterday, President Trump had lunch with 15 senators known to be more in the middle, people like Susan Collins of Maine, et cetera, and he said that the House health care bill, this is the one that he celebrated in the Rose Garden with a beer party, was mean.
Yeah. Yeah, this is, you know, there were a lot of Republicans who voted for that bill in the House of Representatives on the belief that Trump would back them up. And knowing that they were putting a bullseye on their back, it's a terrible metaphor to use on a day like this, right. Knowing that they were setting themselves up, you know, in the next election, the next general election, to you know, have that vote be the ad that was used against them. But they figured that the president would back them up. And then the president comes out and says, "Oh, this thing is mean." That's got to be
unbelievable. And the White House released a photograph of the luncheon in the cabinet room and all this kind of fancy stuff.
Yeah.
But clearly, the president had a very different agenda with the Senate.
Yeah. Well, the Senate, you know, is trying to work out something that's a little more moderate, I guess. But, you know.
Well, then you have people even like from the great state of Ohio, even though he is a Republican governor, who said, okay, even though he had supported the Medicaid money, he said, you can phase out the Medicaid money. That's okay with us over a period of years, but then you have to give us money to support health care for people who don't have it. But I don't think that is forthcoming.
No. And that's also called Medicaid.
Did I say Medicare?
No.
No,
what I mean is
so bad gets confused.
No. What I meant is, if you're going to say yes, you can phase out Medicaid, but give us money for health care for poor people. That is what Medicaid is.
That is Medicaid, yes. Right. But one would be an automatic, guaranteed federal amount, and the other would be guaranteed by the state.
Right. And the states are concerned about this, and the federal.
They're very concerned because they're going to be hit with a health care bill.
Right, and the federal Republicans are perfectly willing to shove it off on them as long as they can get federal tax cuts for the billionaires who fund their campaigns.
Absolutely. Okay, so there were a couple of listening sessions today. One was on health care that took place at the White House. The White House press office said the Secretary of Health and Human Services Secretary, Dr. Tom Price, and the administrators of Medicare and Medicaid Services, speaking of that, Seema Verma, met with medical and healthcare professionals who they say have been adversely affected by the Obamacare law. Now, it's very interesting. I took a look at where these people are from. One is from Pennsylvania. Okay, that's more of a moderate state. You have one from New York. But most of them, Colorado, Louisiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, North Carolina, another one from Louisiana, another one from Tennessee, another one from Texas. I mean, give me a break. They weren't exactly across the board people who have been negatively affected by Obamacare.
Right.
So, also today, very interesting, the Michigan Attorney General. He has charged Nick Lyon. He's the director of the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. I know you know a lot about Michigan.
I grew up there, yeah.
That's right. With involuntary manslaughter and misconduct in office. He said that that in Michigan both of those are actually considered felonies. This is related to the lead-tainted water in Flint, Michigan, and also, which I didn't realize so many people had died from an outbreak of Legionnaire disease with the same tainted water. That has not really been huge in the press. You probably know about it, but I didn't know about it.
Yeah, there was.
So Eden Wells is the chief medical executive. She's also been charged with lying to a police officer and obstruction of justice. This is in addition to the 4 others who were charged previously, but now there has been manslaughter added to those.
So here's the question, Ellen: Is this Rick Snyder essentially throwing a few sacrificial lambs under the bus to avoid the responsibility floating up to his level, or maybe just one step below his level, his emergency manager in Flint? Or is this a sincere effort on the part of the Michigan government to hold responsible the people who are responsible for poisoning the people of Flint?
Well, that is an excellent question, and I obviously don't know the answer to that, but that's certainly a question worth putting out there, because if they just charged a few people and they're really not getting to the bottom of the problem and how this was a giant government cover-up, et cetera, and lying to the people and trying to do stuff on the cheap, then you're absolutely right, Thom Hartmann, that this is just insane, and it is completely and totally a way of just covering up and going after a few people as the sacrificial lambs.
Yeah, remarkable stuff. Ellen Ratner with Talk Media News, brought to you by goatsfortheoldgoat.com and loving what you do. Ellen's new book. Ellen, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Great talking to you. And happy Flag Day. We'll be right back. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. on the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242
or visit tomsbeets.com.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Free Speech TV fund drive today, fundraising drive today. And Free Speech TV needs your help. Please call 877-378-8669 and help us keep this network going. Keep it rolling along. With a $60 contribution, there is the Free Speech TV, or the ACLU rather, Pocket Constitution. This comes not with just the Constitution, but also a little commentary about the Constitution and, you know, what to do if you're arrested or taken to a police station. What if the police come to your home? If you're stopped for questioning, if you're stopped in your car. Lots of interesting stuff in here in this little pocket Constitution. Also, the ACLU has published Know Your Rights cards, to know your rights at demonstrations and protests, and know your rights if you're gay and going to college. So got the book and the cards. So that's the $60 gift, or $5 a month for a year. With a $120 gift, you get a copy of Howard Zinn's book, A People's History of the United States. With a $240 gift, you get a copy of my book, What Would Jefferson Do? And a Pocket Constitution, and the 2 Know Your Rights cards, and a Free Speech TV sticker. And with a $360 gift, or $30 a month for a year, you get the People's History of the U.S., the Voices of the People's History, the Pocket Constitution, the Free Speech TV sticker. And with a $1,000 contribution, come to Washington, D.C., and we'll have lunch. And there's a pizza place down at the end of the street. There's a Thai restaurant around the corner. There's an Ethiopian restaurant downstairs. There's all kinds of great food around here. And although if we get, you know, a couple people together, sometimes we'll have 2 or 3 or 4. Actually, I think only once if we ever had 4. But you know, Free Speech TV, $1,000 donors, and you know, we just typically then, you know, if everybody's up for it, we'll go to pizza or Thai or something, whatever. Anyhow, so we call it the pizza party. Also, Steve is holding his $10,000 matching pledge throughout this week. So your donations up to $10,000 will be doubled. So yesterday, you know, we're trying to hit. I'm trying to hit $10,000 a day. We have not done it yet, and we had, I think, about a $4,000 a day yesterday, which is down. Last Friday was around 6. So, you know, we're not hitting our goals, and we need you to step up if you possibly can. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. Free Speech TV is an extraordinary and unique thing, and it, you know, needs your support, needs your help. It's you know, at a certain level, it's almost like, you know, what am I willing to pay for real news? What am I willing to pay for unfiltered? What am I willing to pay to get the straight scoop? Right? And, you know, or what's it worth in terms of, you know, my time and effort and things? If you, for example, if you can't make a contribution, and I know many of you are living on fixed incomes, and I, you know, I wouldn't want you to hurt yourself for Free Speech TV. But if you can't make a contribution, you can talk about Free Speech TV on your Facebook page or on Twitter or on Instagram or Snapchat or whatever you happen to use, or just send an email to your friends and neighbors saying, hey, you know, check out Free Speech TV. You know, tell people where it is on Dish and DirecTV and how they can find it at freespeech.org. Make it a personal mission to every week have at least 2 or 3 or 4 new people introduced to Free Speech TV. We need to grow the viewership base for Free Speech TV, as well as keep the network alive. And so you can contribute with money, which is like really needed right now. But if you can't contribute with money, there's still a lot of things that you can do to help support Free Speech TV. So please seriously think about that, of making a commitment to say, okay, I'm going to help. I can't give to Free Speech TV, but I probably know 3 people who can, and I want to get them familiar with Free Speech TV in the hopes that they'll get hooked and become regular viewers, and then maybe donors. I mean, you don't call somebody up and say, hey, you ought to watch this so you can donate to it. But it's really how it works. I mean, we need, as Free Speech TV needs more viewers, and here's a mechanism, a tool, an opportunity to do it, and that is, you engaging yourself. And also, Free Speech TV needs some help, and needs to pay the bills. And if it's worth a bag of popcorn at the movies to you every month, $10, $15 a month, $20 a month, great. And if it's worth more than that to you, great. If it's however you like to support Free Speech TV, please call now. We have this week slipped behind, and we really need your help. Please call 877-378-8660. Thanks.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Okay, we had 5 people shot. I guess 6 if you include the shooter. He was shot and killed this morning here in Washington, D.C., including a member of Congress, Steve Scalise. And just 2 minutes ago, ABC Channel 7 in San Francisco is reporting a source says that 4 people have been killed after a shooting at a UPS facility in the area of 17th Street and San Bruno in San Francisco. The suspected gunman is also reportedly dead. The source says the shooter then turned the gun on himself, but is alive, and that currently police are going through the building making sure there aren't other accomplices. So, here we've got another one. And I'm seeing... this morning, I retweeted this old tweet of it's a year old. It was a year ago this month. Senator Rand Paul tweeted, why do we have the Second Amendment? It's not to shoot deer. It's to shoot at the government when it becomes tyrannical. This is Senator Rand Paul. And I just wanted to tell you why we have the Second Amendment, because Rand Paul is wrong. And this whole line of thinking that the whole point of the Second Amendment was to shoot at the government is complete BS. It is a total lie. I mean, in order to have a well-regulated militia means to protect the government, the people, the country, not to shoot at them. But it even goes beyond that. I mean, if you want the real origins of the Second Amendment, it really started with the slave patrols. In Georgia, for example, a generation before the American Revolution, laws were passed in 1755 and 1757. They required every plantation owner and their white male employees to be members of the Georgia militia. This is what it was called. It was called the Georgia militia. Remember the Second Amendment? In order to have a well-regulated militia. And for those armed militia members to make monthly inspections of the quarters of all slaves in the state. The law defined which counties had which armed militias, and even required armed militia members to keep a keen eye out for slaves who may be planning uprisings. Carl Bogus, in 1998, he's at the University of California. He wrote in the University of California Law Review, the Georgia statutes required patrols under the direct direction of commissioned military officers to examine every plantation each month and authorized them to search, and this is a quote from the law, search all Negro houses for offensive weapons and ammunition, end quote, and to apprehend and give 20 lashes to any slave found outside plantation grounds. Now, that was, quite straightforward. Sally Hayden wrote a book called Slave Patrols, Law and Violence in Virginia and the Carolinas. And she writes, although eligibility for the militia seemed all-encompassing, not every middle-aged white male Virginian or Carolinian became a slave patroller. There were exceptions, so men in critical professions like judges and legislators could stay at their work. Generally, though, she documents how most Southern men between 18 and 45, including physicians and ministers, had to serve on the slave patrol militia at one time or another in their lives in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia. And those slave rebellions were keeping the slave patrols busy. At the time the Constitution was ratified, there had been hundreds of substantial slave uprisings across the South. Blacks outnumbered whites in large areas, and state militias were used to prevent and put down slave uprisings. As Dr. Bogus points out, you can only have slavery in a police state, so basically our slave patrols were the police state. So how did this become the Second Amendment to the United States? Well, James Monroe, George Mason, who owned over 300 slaves, and Patrick Henry, who was the largest slaveholder in the state of Virginia. Give me liberty or give me death, that guy, he was the largest single slaveholder in the state of Virginia. They were concerned, the Constitution was being ratified, and this was the ratifying convention debate in Virginia. Are we going to vote for this Constitution or not? Because if Virginia pulled out, it would have broken down, because Virginia was like right in the middle of the whole line of states, and it was the critical state. And Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution gives the federal government the power to raise and supervise a militia. And Patrick Henry and George Mason and James Monroe were very concerned, these slaveholders were very concerned that, and this was at the deciding whether or not to take the Constitution, very, very concerned that if the Northerners took over the federal government, because at that point in time it was principally Southerners, but if the Northerners took over the federal government and they raised a militia, they could free all the slaves in the process. Here's how Patrick Henry laid it out at the ratifying convention. I'm quoting from Patrick Henry, 1788. Let me here call your attention to Article 1, Section 8 of the proposed Constitution, which gives the Congress power to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States. By this, sir, you see that their control over our last and best defense is unlimited. If they neglect or refuse to discipline or arm our militia, they will be useless. Keep in mind, when he says our militia, he's talking about our slave patrols. They will be useless. The states can do neither. This power is being given exclusively to Congress. The power of appointing officers over men not disciplined or armed is ridiculous, so that this pretended little remains of power left to the states may at the pleasure of Congress be rendered nugatory. George Mason added, the militia here may be destroyed by that method, and he goes into this. And then Patrick Henry just bluntly says, if the country be invaded, a state may go to war, but cannot suppress slave insurrections under this new Constitution. If there should happen an insurrection of slaves, the country cannot be said to have been invaded. They cannot therefore suppress it without the interposition of Congress. Congress, and only Congress, can call forth the militia. Now, why was this such a concern for Patrick Henry? Well, in this state, Patrick Henry said at the Virginia Ratifying Convention in 1788, in this state, he said, there are 236,000 blacks, and there are many in several other states. But there are few or none in the northern states. May Congress not say that every black man must fight? Did we not see a little of this in the Revolutionary War? We were not so hard pushed as to make emancipation general, but acts of assembly passed that every slave who would go to the army should go free. And he was referring to George Washington. This is called manumission. They're freeing the slaves in exchange for joining the military. The British were offering, said to American slaves, if you can escape, we'll take you. And George Washington actually had a group of former slaves. Again, back to Patrick Henry. He said, quote, they will search that paper, the Constitution, and see if they have the power of manumission. And have they not, sir? Have they not the power to provide for the general defense and welfare? May they not think that these call for the abolition of slavery? May they not pronounce all slaves free? And will they not be warranted by that power? This is no ambiguous implication or logical deduction, said Patrick Henry. The paper, the Constitution, speaks to the point. They have the power in clear, unequivocal terms and will clearly and certainly exercise it. This is a local matter, and I can see no propriety in subjecting it to Congress. At that point, James Madison, the original Second Amendment, said, in order to maintain a free nation. And you'll notice the current Second Amendment is in order to maintain a free state. So James Madison said to Patrick Henry, in this situation, he said to Patrick Henry, okay, we'll just see the original, the right of the people. This is the first draft of the Second Amendment, verbatim from Madison. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, a well-armed and well-regulated militia being the best security of a free country. But no person religiously scrupulous of bearing arms shall be compelled to render military service in person. In other words, this was all about building a militia. But Henry and Mason, were freaked out. And so he redrafted it. And he said, okay, we'll make, instead of a free nation or a free country, we'll say a free state. So you can still keep your militia in Virginia, your slave patrol. And thus, we get the Second Amendment in today's form. A well-regulated militia, meaning necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So that is the origin of the Second Amendment. It is unambiguous. You can look it up. I realize that, trying to look it up, you'll encounter page after page after page of NRA and gun manufacturer and right-wing BS that doesn't refer to this stuff, but this is the actual history. So, isn't it time for this kind of rhetoric that Senator Rand Paul tweeted last year? Why do we, one year ago this month, why do we have a Second Amendment? He wrote, Rand Paul, it's not to shoot deer, it's to shoot at the government when it becomes tyrannical. This is absolute, utter nonsense. And, we've had a bunch of right-wingers believing this and going out and shooting at people like Gabby Giffords. And now we got a left-winger believing this and going out and shooting at a right-winger, Steve Scalise. It's nuts. It's not why the Second Amendment was not put into place so that civilians can go out and shoot politicians. And stop saying it, Senator Paul and everybody else. The Second Amendment was put into place in order to allow the southern states to keep their slave patrols, and at the same time, in the hopes that we could have a national militia of sorts. Each state would have a militia that could be called up during time of war. There was a huge debate during the constitutional era, during the 1770s, 1787, 88, 89. It was written in 87 and ratified in 89. There was a huge debate during that time over whether the United States should even have a standing military. Jefferson was arguing very strongly we should have no military. He wanted a navy, a permanent navy, but no permanent army, because over and over and over again throughout history, all the way back to ancient Rome, you were seeing governments being overthrown by the military. He did not want a standing army during time of peace, only during time of war. Well, how do you do that? You do it the way Switzerland does right now, which was what Jefferson's proposal was back in 1787, which is you have every state have a militia. And if that militia happens to also be the slave patrol, that's just fine. In his mind, he was a slaveholder, all these other guys. And so you have each state have a militia, and if the country gets invaded, the militia gets called up by the federal government, and they march off to war. That's the origin of the Second Amendment. And Americans really need to own up to the real history of this country if we're gonna have any kind of rational conversation about where all this came from, where all this is going, and particularly about political violence. We'll be back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back in just a minute with your calls and more of the news of the day. Stick around. And welcome back, Barbara in New York City. Hey, Barbara, thanks for calling. What's on your mind? Thanks for watching Free Speech TV.
Hi, Tom. A friend of mine named Dan made a suggestion for a candidate for the Democrats in 2020, Al Gore. And I was thinking about it. It seems to me he checks all the boxes. He's tall, white, male, Christian. He's a vegetarian. And he's been talking about climate change long before people realized that climate ends in E. I was just wondering what you think about it. Do you think the DNC would support his candidacy, and do you think he could win?
I don't think the DNC would support his candidacy because, he's already been there. And although there is precedent for it. I mean, Grover Cleveland was elected to non-serial, he was elected president, and then there was a Republican elected after that, and then he was elected president again back in the 1880s. But and the Republicans have a habit of taking primary losers and running them for president in the next cycle. In fact, it's almost a ritual, but the Democrats tend not to do that. So I'd be very surprised, Barbara, if they did. I think Al Gore would make a great president, but I just don't see it happening. But, for what it's worth, Barbara, thank you for the call. It's an interesting idea. I mean, we should run it by Al. John in McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania. Hey, John. Oh, John just hung up. Okay. I think that does it for my Free Speech TV callers. The article that I was reading to you from, by the way, is called "The Second Amendment was ratified to preserve slavery." I wrote this on January 5th. It was published on January 15th, 2013. I should probably rewrite this thing and put it out again. January 15th, 2013, published in alternate, and it was originally published on truthout.org. And you can Google it or DuckDuckGo it or whatever real easily by simply putting Second Amendment, Hartmann, and Slave Patrol or something like that, and it'll pop right up, and you'll have the quotes and you'll have the links, although some of the links are broken now. It's been 4 years since I wrote this. But, it's all there. It should be all there. So anyhow, check that out. And this is interesting. Well, actually, we should save that for later. There's new data on inequality. This is remarkable. Howard Gold wrote this for Economics magazine. The data set reveals that since 1980, a sharp divergence in the growth experienced by the bottom 50% versus the rest of the economy took place. The researchers write. And the graphics are quite remarkable. Income growth in the United States from 1980 to 2014. If you're in the top 1/1000th of 1%, your income growth has been around 700%. If you're in the top 1/100th of 1%, your income growth has been around 500%. If you're in the top 1/10th of 1%, your income growth has been around 300%. If you're in the top 1%, your income growth since 1980 has been 200%. If you're in the top 10%, your income growth has been around 100%. But if you're in the middle 40 or the bottom 50, if you're in the middle 40, your income growth has been around 30%. And if you're in the bottom 50% of Americans, your income has gone backwards. Amazing. We'll be back.
Hi there, I'm Marie with Free Speech TV. Your support, whether through giving donations, volunteering, or spreading the word about Free Speech TV, has made it possible for the only independent progressive news network to exist. And for that, I want to say thank you. Now you can give to the network powered by the people by donating an unwanted or used vehicle through our Vehicles of Change program. If you have an old car, RV, or even a motorcycle, Free Speech TV can use it to grow and thrive. You can make a bigger difference in supporting Free Speech TV by giving an old car. It's a great way to support the network without having to dig into your bank account. Just call 877-378-8669 and ask for more information about Vehicles of Change. Again, the number to call is 877-378-8669. If it has a VIN, we'll take it in. Thank you.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you and Stephen in Monroe, North Carolina. Hey, Stephen, thanks for listening to us on SiriusXM. What's up?
Hey, Tom. Hey, this whole theory of yours about the Second Amendment.
It's not a theory, it's history.
You mentioned before you were quoting, particularly from an article you wrote back in January 2013 from Truth Out. Well, one of the sources, and I've read this before, there's an Independent Institute article from a couple of weeks later titled "The Second Amendment was not ratified."
I know.
To preserve slavery.
I remember.
And there are multiple things that I won't go into, but the main part, and I told you, Call Streeter, that I call this a Gnostic conspiracy theory because it relies on so-called hidden knowledge of what the motivations of the Second Amendment was supposed to be.
It's not hidden knowledge when Patrick Henry comes right out and says, we've got 230,000 slaves in this state, and under the Constitution, under Article 1, Section 8, if the president calls up the militias of the states, he can call up those slaves and free them. He says it right out loud. It's part of the documentary record. George Mason was saying the same thing.
To talk about the Second Amendment, I mean, there's tons of evidence about the Second Amendment and other discussions.
There is no evidence anywhere that the Second Amendment was designed, that any of the founders had in mind that the Second Amendment was, as Rand Paul said, to shoot at politicians, or as he let me get his exact thing. He said it's to shoot at the government when it becomes tyrannical. There's nobody. Now, let me just be absolutely emphatic about this, Stephen, and I challenge you to provide one piece of evidence that I'm wrong, even one. There's no evidence that any of the founders thought that the Second Amendment was put into place so that people could shoot at the government of the United States in any form, under any circumstances.
I'm not defending Rand Paul. I'm defending that the Second Amendment is a legitimate constitutional right and not tied to militia service. And I'll just give one example, and this is coming from a strange place, but from the Dred Scott decision. The Dred Scott decision, one of the justifications in saying that blacks were not to be considered citizens is that there was a quote from one of the judges saying that if blacks were considered to be citizens, they would be able to keep and carry arms wherever they may go. No mention of the militia.
Right, because they could become members. They could theoretically become members of militias, or what? What does that have to do with the Second Amendment? Stephen, I gotta run. Good try, but no, I'm sorry. The Second Amendment was put into place to protect the United States of America, not to empower the citizens to attack the United States of America. It's really that simple.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Back with your calls after. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Free Speech TV fund drive today, fundraising drive today. And Free Speech TV needs your help. Please call 877-378-8669 and help us keep this network going. Keep it rolling along. With a $60 contribution, there is the Free Speech TV, or the ACLU rather, Pocket Constitution. This comes not with just the Constitution, but also a little commentary about the Constitution and, you know, what to do if you're arrested or taken to a police station. What if the police come to your home, if you're stopped for questioning, if you're stopped in your car. Lots of interesting stuff in here in this little pocket Constitution. Also, the ACLU has published Know Your Rights cards, to know your rights at demonstrations and protests, and know your rights if you're gay and going to college. So got the book,
and the cards. So that's the $60 gift, or $5 a month for a year. With a $120 gift, you get a copy of Howard Zinn's book, A People's History of the United States. With a $240 gift, you get a copy of my book, What Would Jefferson Do? And a pocket constitution, and the 2 Know Your Rights cards, and a Free Speech TV sticker. And with a $360 gift, or $30 a month for a year, you get the People's History of the U.S., the Voices of the People's History, the Pocket Constitution, the Free Speech TV sticker. And with a $1,000 contribution, come to Washington, D.C., and we'll have lunch. And there's a pizza place down at the end of the street. There's a Thai restaurant around the corner. There's an Ethiopian restaurant downstairs. There's all kinds of great food around here. And although if we get, a couple people together, sometimes we'll have 2 or 3 or 4. Actually, I think only once if we ever had 4. But Free Speech TV, $1,000 donors, and we just typically then, if everybody's up for it, we'll go to pizza or Thai or something, whatever. Anyhow, so we call it the pizza party. Also, Steve is holding his $10,000 matching pledge throughout this week. So your donations up to $10,000 will be doubled. So yesterday, we're trying to hit. I'm trying to hit $10,000 a day. We have not done it yet, and we had, I think, about a $4,000 a day yesterday, which is down. Last Friday was around 6. So, we're not hitting our goals, and we need you to step up if you possibly can. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. Free Speech TV is an extraordinary and unique thing, and it, needs your support, needs your help. It's at a certain level, it's almost like, what am I willing to pay for real news? What am I willing to pay for unfiltered? What am I willing to pay to get the straight scoop? And or what's it worth in terms of my time and effort and things. If you, for example, if you can't make a contribution, and I know many of you are living on fixed incomes, and I wouldn't want you to hurt yourself for Free Speech TV. But if you can't make a contribution, you can talk about Free Speech TV on your Facebook page or on Twitter or on Instagram or Snapchat or whatever you happen to use. Or just send an email to your friends and neighbors saying, hey, check out Free Speech TV. Tell people where it is on Dish and DirecTV and how they can find it at freespeech.org. Make it a personal mission to every week have at least 2 or 3 or 4 new people introduced to Free Speech TV. We need to grow the viewership base for Free Speech TV, as well as keep the network alive. And so you can contribute with money, which is really needed right now. But if you can't contribute with money, there's still a lot of things that you can do to help support Free Speech TV. So please seriously think about that, of making a commitment to say, okay, I'm going to help. I can't give to Free Speech TV, but I probably know 3 people who can, and I want to get them familiar with Free Speech TV in the hopes that they'll get hooked and become regular viewers. And then maybe donors. I mean, you don't call somebody up and say, hey, you ought to watch this so you can donate to it. But it's really how it works. I mean, we need, as Free Speech TV needs more viewers, and here's a mechanism, a tool, an opportunity to do it, and that is, you engaging yourself. And also, Free Speech TV needs some help, and needs to pay the bills. And if it's worth a bag of popcorn at the movies to you every month, $10, $15 a month, $20 a month, great. And if it's worth more than that to you, great. If it's however you like to support Free Speech TV, please call now. We have this week slipped behind, and we really need your help. Please call 877-378-8660. Thanks.
Want to hear that clip again? Subscribe to the Thom Hartmann Program on YouTube to see all your favorite show highlights. You can support the Thom Hartmann Program and see video of our entire 3-hour show over at patreon.com/Thom Hartmann. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and just trying to take care of a little business here. Bob in Burlington, Vermont. Hey, Bob, what's on your mind today? Bob in Burlington, listening on Sirius XM. Bob, you got to listen to your phone rather than your radio. Oh, yeah. Ash, hang on just a second. I'm going to put you up next. But we've got a clip. This is a clip of Senator Sanders this morning in the Senate. I think, apropos of the shooting that happened, has consumed the news cycle. It's worth playing. Here it is.
Madam President, I have just been informed that the alleged shooter at the Republican baseball practice this morning is someone who apparently volunteered on my presidential campaign. I am sickened by this despicable act, and let me be as clear as I can be. Violence of any kind is unacceptable in our society, and I condemn this action in the strongest possible terms. Real change can only come about through nonviolent action, and anything else runs counter to our most deeply held American values. I know I speak for the entire country in saying that my hopes and prayers are that Representative Scalise, congressional staff, and the Capitol Police officers who were wounded make a quick and full recovery. I also want to thank the Capitol Police for their heroic actions to prevent further harm. Thank you, Madam President.
There you go, Senator Sanders this morning. Okay, Ash in Marshall, North Carolina. Hey, Ash, what's up?
Hey, good afternoon, Tom. This is Kenneth Ash. I want to discuss about how we are a violent society, and it kind of comes from the top. We create war all around the world. We glorify our military. If anybody wants to make a movie about the military, use any military assets, then the Army gets to write the script, or at least
consult
the script.
Yeah.
And so we have killed. I served 2 years in Vietnam, and I saw war up close and personal, and it's pretty ugly. But yet we killed 2 to 3 million people in Southeast Asia, and I would estimate that we've killed 4 to 5 million innocent civilians all around the world since World War II. We are a violent society, and we just have to face that fact. Even Bernie Sanders, who talks about violence, he votes for the war economy. He votes to send troops to war. And if we want less violence in our society, we need to stop at the top, quit promoting it around the world, and start looking at a more compassionate, more level-headed way of treating each other.
Yeah, I wouldn't drop Bernie into that slot, but I understand what you're saying, and at a certain level, and this is why I felt it was so important to go back to the slave patrols with regard to the Second Amendment. This nation was birthed in violence. We Caucasians from Europe came to North America, and a continent that was already completely, fully occupied. I mean, there were dozens of tribes just around where I'm sitting right now, within a couple of miles of me. You go to the Native American Museum here in the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., and it's just astonishing how, they've documented how densely populated North America was by Native Americans at the time of first contact. And we committed genocide over the period of the next 300-400 years. We're continuing to a large extent. And then on top of that, we dragged a bunch of people from Africa over as slaves. And, this is a country birthed in violence. It should not surprise us that there's violence. But, that said,
You could say the same thing about Europe. You look at, you know, the history of the Roman Empire. You look at the history of the Greek Empire. You look at the history of World Wars I and II. And long back before that, you know, the era of the Middle Ages and all this. I mean, it's the Crusades. I mean, our culture is birthed in violence. And I'm concerned, Ash, that if we don't figure out how to break that cycle, that, and Ash, thank you for the call, that we are condemned to it, right? We are condemned to continue living it and reliving it over and over and over again. So what have other countries done? Well, this is where I would encourage you to go watch Michael Moore's movie, which I'm sure you can watch over on Amazon Prime or whatever. You know, it's got to be online someplace. You know, Where to Invade Next. He goes to Norway. You know, the Vikings used to be the most ferocious of the Northern Europeans, the conquerors, the ones everybody was afraid of. He goes to Norway and looks at their criminal justice system. And it's extraordinary. It's completely committed to rehabilitation as opposed to punishment. I mean, it's separation from society, which is in and of itself punishment, but not torture. We torture people in the United States. We put them in solitary confinement. We put them in cages. The Norwegians don't. Their jails are like apartment buildings. And everybody shares a common kitchen. And yeah, there's knives and forks and, you know, potential weapons all over the place. But they work it through. They work it out. It is designed to fix people. Bill in St. Paul, Minnesota. Hey, Bill, what's up? Thanks for listening to KTNF.
Hi, Tom. Sounds like we both saw the film The Coming War with China.
Yeah, John Pilger's new movie, yeah.
It's a great film, but I'd like to point out a contradiction in terms of the military-industrial complex. In that film, they showed a ring of U.S. bases kind of around China,
right,
trying to contain everything. But the fact remains that the U.S. corporations have moved a lot of factories there. Now, if there's a war with China, the corporate people aren't going to like that, to see their factories destroyed. So doesn't that really make this ring of military bases some sort of sham brinkmanship or sham containment then?
It's hard to say. I mean, you know, Jack Kennedy was willing to take us right up to the edge of World War III over Russia putting, or the Soviet Union at that time, putting nuclear weapons 90 miles from our shores. So, you know, it's I wouldn't underestimate the threat potential of our militarizing the areas surrounding China. We're doing it, you know, very actively and very aggressively, and China now is militarizing and pushing back. I'm very concerned about it, Bill. I really am. And
well, I don't think we'd like it if China put a bunch of military bases offshore.
No, we would not tolerate it. And that's the whole point of Thucydides' trap, you know, of the author that we had on earlier, where he's you know, and professor at the Kennedy School of Government, is the idea that this rising power, China, they're now, I mean, last year they became the world's largest economy. We're number 2, and they're operating under the rules of a developing country, which, you know, the international rules, now these are not written down anywhere, but it's kind of, you know, the conventions, as it were, of no, you can't become an imperial power. You can't project force across the world. You have to only, you know, protect yourself and your own country. And China's starting to say, well, wait a minute, you know, our economy is bigger than yours is now, and you're telling us that you can be a worldwide empire, but we can't? We're not going to buy that. And they're getting very, very active in Africa. They're getting very active in other parts of Asia. But particularly in Africa, you know, looking largely for natural resources as well as markets for their products. So I see a collision coming. In fact, I see a collision already here. And I frankly thought that Trump being elected on this anti-China rhetoric that he was elected on was going to force that, was going to provoke that. And instead, Xi came over here and basically played Trump, you know, made nice with him. And everything's going to be fine, and don't worry, and Trump backed off, you know, which I think is probably a good thing, but I don't think, well, hang on.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
But I don't think that you're going to see a lot of factories returning to the United States any day soon, because Trump is not changing our policies. He gave in to what China wanted. And welcome back. Let's see here. Dennis, watching Free Speech TV in St. Petersburg, Florida. Hey, Dennis, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. I've been watching for a while now. I really like your opinions. I'm really curious to say, why are we still in Afghanistan?
Yeah, it's a good question. And in fact, that was one of the topics that I was going to do as an hour-long topic today, because Trump just gave McMaster the ability to just set troop levels for Afghanistan wherever he wants. Right now, it's at 8,800.
Well,
and
here's what I had heard earlier. I don't know if it's correct or not, but basically, opium production under the Taliban, they basically denied opium production, and it's skyrocketing since, we've taken over. Is there something there?
No, what happened was in 2001, when George W. Bush was elected president, the United States was having a heroin crisis, as we are to this day, and a lot of that heroin was coming from Afghanistan. It was coming from poppies that were grown in Afghanistan. So Bush negotiated a deal with Mullah Omar, with the Taliban, that we would give them $20 million, which is chump change. Right. But keep in mind, Afghanistan was the second poorest country in the world. The GDP of the entire nation was only $2 billion a year. So he made this deal where we would give them $20 million, as I recall. It might have been 30 or 40, but it was in that neighborhood. And in exchange for that, they would burn the opium fields, the Taliban. And the Taliban kept the deal. Opium production in 2002 over 2001 in Afghanistan dropped by something like 70 or 80%, or in early 2001, I guess, compared to 2000. But then, after 9/11, when Trump invaded Afghanistan, of course, all deals were off. We busted up the Taliban, and opium production went ping right back up again, and it's been skyrocketing ever since. I think the biggest issue, though, Dennis, is that what doesn't work is occupation. We're not fighting a war in Afghanistan. We're trying to sustain an occupation and prop up the government that we like. And occupations never work. We in 1776, we were viewing the British as occupiers and threw them out. We're 15 years now in Afghanistan, and there's never going to be a number of troops that you can use to subdue a country. It just doesn't happen. You can utterly defeat a country in a war like we did with Germany and Japan, but you basically have to bomb it back to the Stone Age, although Afghanistan was already Stone Age. But then you've got to help them build their country back up, as we did with the Marshall Plan after World War II. You've got to help them build their country back up in a way that is solid and meaningful and produces wealth for them. And we have not been rebuilding the infrastructure of Afghanistan. And to the extent to which we did, we allocated hundreds of billions of dollars for rebuilding Afghanistan. Keep in mind, a country with a $2 billion a year GDP. We have spent hundreds of billions of dollars rebuilding Afghanistan. Virtually all that money went to American defense contractors who were producing, in many cases, very, very, very defective products. And in Afghanistan, in infrastructure, schools, roads, whatever, just build junk and leave, and build a government, $500 for a gallon of water or a gallon of gasoline. I mean, it's just been nuts. So yeah, it doesn't work. Occupation doesn't work. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Gordon in Stamford, Connecticut. Hey, Gordon, what's on your mind today? Gordon?
Hi, Tom.
Hey.
I had a good idea to counteract Fox News or Fox News channel. What if we had a system which we would call Fox News Watch? would be a live internet program which is monitoring Fox News in real time and making comments on what they say.
There used to be a website that did that. They call it, I'm forgetting the name of the website. It's been probably 4 or 5 years since it went away, but their tagline was, "We watch Fox so you don't have to." And every day they would put up the outrage from Fox from the day before. Nowadays, if you go to MediaMatters.org, you'll find an awful lot of expose of some of the outrageous stuff that Fox is pushing out there.
Yes, but my idea is that it's live, and you're actually watching Fox, and you're listening to Fox News Watch at the same time. You can basically have this running all the time and have, during commercials, you can do fact-checking or bring up things that Fox News is not bringing up.
Yeah.
So to be a live interaction with Fox News.
I would rather just discourage people from exposing themselves to that. It's sort of like, we're going to give you a virus and we're also going to give you the aspirin, you know. But I understand what you're saying. I absolutely understand what you're saying, Gordon. And you know, if you're looking for a project, go for it. I got to move along. But Gordon, thanks for the call. Andrew in Tularosa, New Mexico. Hey, Andrew, what's on your mind today?
How are you doing, Tom?
Good. What's up?
Second Amendment. I totally agree with you that Rand Paul made a ludicrous statement by saying the guns are there to use against the government. They are absolutely used in defense of our country. We no longer have those slave parties running around, the groups hunting people down, but nonetheless, there is a threat for us to protect ourselves. And I'd like to point out to everybody who's anti-gun, it is an inalienable right and can only be surrendered by the individual.
Yeah, well, I'm not anti-gun, but I don't see where having a gun is an inalienable right. It's a privilege.
Guaranteed in the Bill of Rights, first 10.
No, it doesn't. The Second Amendment does not say if you are convicted of a crime, you can still have a gun. It doesn't say if you're a violent felon, you can still have a gun. There's no inalienable right to a gun there. It's a privilege. And even the Supreme Court case, what was the name of the case? Yeah, Heller, thank you. That basically found an individual right to own a gun in the Constitution, following a very bizarre chain of logic that the NRA started promoting back in the 60s. Even the Heller Amendment doesn't say that it's an inalienable right. It is a privilege, but you know that it can be qualified. I mean, you know, there's no other way around that. Andrew?
Yes, Tom. I really enjoy watching your show because I get a whole different perspective from, unlike Fox, which is totally one-sided and skewed. Here, you give material that is researchable and portrayed straight along the line. Like you said, you're not anti-gun, but you're pointing out the origination of it all.
Yeah. No, I'm not anti-gun. One of my three brothers is a gun owner and gun enthusiast, shall we say. He's got a bunch of guns, and you know, Louise and I go visit him and his wife, and our favorite thing to do with them is target practice in his backyard. He's got a target range. I'm not opposed to guns. I'm opposed to people having guns in a way that's destructive to society. I think we should do with guns the same thing we do with cars. There's no inalienable right to own a car either. It's a privilege, but it's broadly considered a right. In other words, unless you have a drunk driving conviction, you can drive a car. You can own and drive a car, but you have to own it. You have to the car is registered from the beginning of its creation until it's destroyed. You have liability insurance, and you have to prove that you know how to use it in a safe manner, and you're given a license to do that. And I think if we did the same thing with guns, register them from manufacture to destruction, every gun owner must have liability insurance in case that gun kills somebody or hurts somebody. And why is it, for example, and everybody has a license, it demonstrates, and which could be a business for the NRA, if they're looking for it. But why is it that if a drunk driver had run down those kids at Sandy Hook, every single one of them would be getting $1 million, or their families anyway, would be getting $1 million from, Geico and all the other insurance companies out there. Whereas because they were shot with a gun, they get nothing. Because we don't, and the whole point of the liability insurance for cars was because cars can kill people. So,
And I agree with responsible gun ownership. Absolutely. Absolutely. There are some yo-yos out there that don't even deserve a slingshot in their hand, much less a full automatic rifle.
yeah, there you go. Andrew, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Barbara in Saginaw, Michigan. Hey, Barbara, what's up?
I wanted to talk about that Michigan Attorney General situation. He does not work for Rick Snyder. He's something of a political rival of Rick Snyder. It's Bill Schuette, and what he's really doing is setting up to run to replace Snyder, who's term limited. He's going to be done next year.
Oh, so they're prosecuting a guy for Flint, and so this guy prosecuting him is doing it so that he can get political PR points. Is that it?
Yeah, there's no way that a Republican that looks like he's close to Snyder would get elected next year. That's just not going to happen. So this is a Republican who's trying to put distance between himself and the Snyder administration. They're separately elected. He doesn't work for Rick Snyder. He's a completely separate elected official.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with it. My wife's father used to be the Assistant Attorney General of the state of Michigan,
What this guy's doing is, which I don't object to these charges, or I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there's a political goal here, which is to make himself as distant from Snyder as possible, so he would be a more attractive Republican candidate.
Fascinating. Barbara, thank you for that bit of Michigan information. I appreciate it. It's great to hear from you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, bye.
Thank you. KC in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Hey, KC, thanks for listening to KABQ. What's up?
Oh, it's always my pleasure. I want to say something about the comment that you made that every state is supposed to have their own militia.
That was the idea at the founding of the country. In fact, every state pretty much did have their own militia.
Well, they do now.
Yeah, it's called the National Guard. Yeah.
And the National Guard, pretty much has their own armory, so they're well armed militias, right?
Yep.
And I've only been inside a few, but the ones I've been inside have the Second Amendment on the wall.
Yeah, because that's the whole point of it. I mean, the National Guard is, pretty much what Jefferson was pitching for. And in particular, I would refer you, if you want to research this, go back to the original documents. In 1787, in November or December of 1787, Jefferson was in Paris as the U.S. envoy to France, and Madison was in Washington, D.C., or no, he was wherever he was. He was in Virginia. And Madison sent Jefferson the newly written Constitution. First time, first draft. And Jefferson sent him back a letter saying, I will not support this unless there's something in here that says that we shall have no standing armies during time of peace. And he and Madison had an extensive correspondence about this, and Madison, that they wanted state militias during time of peace. They wanted a navy. You got to protect your trade routes, but they didn't want a standing army during time of peace. That was the whole essence of it. Casey, thanks a lot for the call, and thank you all for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us participating, engaged, concerned. So get out there, get active, tag, you're it. I'll see you.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242.
Or visit tomsbeets.com.